Good evening, everybody. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for joining us at the July 7th council meeting. We are mostly a full council with Deputy Mayor Spivey absent and excused. Does anybody have any comments on tonight's meeting agenda? Councilmember Sandberg.
I would like to add 15 minutes to the discussion on Agenda Bill 15095, which is the comment letter from the city to Sound Transit's long-range plan.
Okay, so 30 minutes total. Anyone else? I'm okay with that. Any other changes to tonight's meeting agenda? I do. I'm adding an executive session, which we'll have during break, regarding legal advice, potential sale of property, and pending litigation. So we estimate that will take a total of 20 minutes. And also, just for clarification, on our consent agenda, since no items currently have been pulled, there is a clarification on the Tuesday, May 19th. Councilmember Sandberg pointed out an error in the motion to approve the consent, and Councilmember Lamb made the motion, was seconded by Councilmember Agnew. I believe the original said Councilmember Agnew made the motion and second. Yes.
I'd also like to pull from the consent agenda, Agenda Bill 15087, which is the city manager's contract. And then I have something for projected agenda as well.
Great. Anything else on tonight's? No? So projected?
So I am assuming that tonight we're going to be approving our major comprehensive plan update, and in there are some items, if approved, will probably be heard by Planning Commission at some future date. And so I would like a staff update regarding I believe this is not our major plan update, it would be the 2015 comp plan docket that we started in January of this year. So we went through a docketing process in January. Things might be added from this major plan update, and so I'd like to have council see the cumulative workload for Planning Commission for the next comprehensive plan review.
Seems reasonable. Anybody else? Councilmember Evans?
On the previous projected agenda, there was tonight, or I guess it was next week, it was scheduled for a presentation on the 405 tolling. I guess that's been moved to July 21st, looks like. Is that a report from them on just that project and the background on that, I guess?
Item number 4.
Yeah, I guess it was scheduled earlier, but it's been moved back, so it'd be interesting to hear that report.
Is that timing problematic, or?
No, I guess I was looking at my old consent agenda, or my old projected agenda, and saw it sooner than that on the 14th session, I believe, but I guess it's been pushed back to the 21st, so that's fine.
Could be we had our grand plans, but somebody had vacation plans or something.
And
Something else?
Yeah, I had 2 more items. I asked questions of our city attorney regarding council's ability to enact emergency bans on fireworks, and he responded to the entire council. And so I would like to add that as a discussion item at a future date. This is not a ban on fireworks. This is the council's authority to enact an emergency ban, which with all of the coverage in the Seattle Times regarding Governor Inslee's inability to enact bans, there were some examples from other jurisdictions like Douglas County, who had given itself the authority to enact emergency bans in the case of high fire danger. And so it was my understanding from our attorney's email that we do not have that authority. However, we could give ourselves that authority. And so I think I'd like to have a discussion on that.
Are there others that would like to have that on the agenda? Okay. Yeah. What's your second or third item?
And finally, we received a letter, all of us on council received a letter from a citizen regarding the potential for a city flag design competition, and that's something that I forwarded to the city manager. And so if there is interest in council on having staff look at that, I see that as something kind of off in the future, certainly after August break. If such a competition would be interesting to other citizens, residents, business owners, then beyond the individual citizen who proposed it to us.
Outside of having our logo on a flag, I don't see a reason to come up with a city flag. Others? No? No. Okay. Is that it for your projected agenda items?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Andy, Councilmember Agnew? No? Okay. Well, next on our agenda then, we'd like to turn the floor over actually to our city manager for some introductions for 2 new employees of the city of Bothell.
Thank you, Mayor. You're right. We do have 2 new employees present with us this evening. New Human Resources Director, Dean Perez. Dean comes to us from Clatsop County, where he served as the Director of Administrative Services. And then Dean's behind me, if he could stand up. And then also Barbara Ramey. She's our new Communications Officer. Barbara comes to us from King County Elections, where she served as the Communications Specialist. Both these individuals are highly qualified, and they have more than 25 years' experience each. And their professional careers, and so we're just we want to welcome them this evening to you and introduce them to you.
Great. Thank you so much for joining the city of Bothell. I'm glad to have you and look forward to getting to know you at upcoming events or otherwise. Good deal. Thanks. Next on our agenda is a special presentation. We've combined these 2 items together. It's King County Metro long-range planning and schedule, as well as a Sound Transit proposed project list and schedule. We have Lisa Schaefer with King County Metro and Chris Rule with Sound Transit with us. So I'd love to hear from you this evening at the podium. And if you would, just make sure the little green light is on the microphone as you get up there.
Good evening. Am I working? All right. Oh, the lights came back on. No. Good evening, members of the council, and in the audience and staff. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity for King County Metro and for Sound Transit to come speak before you tonight. Again, my name is Lisa Schaefer. I'm in the Strategy and Performance Group at King County Metro, and our group is leading the long-range planning effort. It's great for us to come together, Sound Transit and Metro, as we are both embarking on long-range planning efforts, and we're both here to talk to you about those. So I will kick it off. What we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to talk about the overview of the schedule of both our process and Sound Transit, and then we're going to start off, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about our long-range planning process, and then I will turn it over to Sound Transit to talk about their ST3 planning process. And again, as I mentioned before, we've really made a concerted effort to coordinate what we're doing as we go forward in this long-range planning. We have adopted policy direction from our strategic plan in 2013, which called for us to do a long-range plan. Sound Transit updated their long-range plan in 2014, and we are moving forward in a coordinated transit process. And we are moving towards what I just referred to as our long-range transit plan, and Sound Transit is working towards developing their system plan, otherwise known as ST3. So our timeline, so we are in June or July right now. Time moves fast. And so we just finished a phase of public outreach together. And as you look across the calendar, they're going to begin evaluation of projects in September. Chris will talk a little bit more about that. We're working towards a preliminary draft concept of the Metro plan the end of this year or early January in that timeline. We'll be looking to finalize our network plan next spring. and hopefully transmitting it to council sometime next year. We're looking at summer. It may get pushed out a little bit as we try to work together with Sound Transit. We actually intentionally created our schedule this way, a compressed schedule to match Sound Transit's timeline for them to get a measure on the ballot. And so that's where our calendars have synced up. They're looking to have a draft system plan next spring as well, about the same time as us. And diving into the Metro process, as I mentioned, when we updated our strategic plan, which is basically our policy document, we added a new strategy to calling for us to establish and maintain a long-range transit plan that included service and capital, and it was in collaboration with local and regional planning. So that's why it's even more important that we get out into the communities and have opportunities to speak before councils like you and other forums. Why now? Why are we conducting a long-range plan? There's no time better than the present. King County continues to grow as we look forward. We're expecting quite a bit of growth. There could be about 360,000 more people, I think, in King County by 2040. It's about a 28% growth in population. Transit is very popular. Ridership continues to rise on Metro services as well as all the other services in the region. We've surpassed our record that had originally been set in 2008, and we just keep going up and up. Metro funding is insufficient. We need to find a plan to rally around some ideas and support for more funding. Light rail is expanding. Sound Transit is planning for more. Even more important for us to plan as they make their plans. How are we going to work together to create a network? As I'm sure everyone is aware, congestion is out there, traffic congestion, and it's increasing. It's impacting economic development growth. And travel behaviors and demand are changing. People are getting around differently. People are traveling to different places. The jobs are moving. They're shifting where they are, so people are looking at different movements. What is our plan going to do? Our goal is to show how Metro will help the county grow. How can we contribute to mobility in the region? Our plan is intended to include a 2040 but also a 2025 service network. Our real focus will be on those corridors where there's going to be more frequent, more rapid ride like our high capacity transit, mid capacity transit services. We will also talk about alternative services as well as the whole gamut of fixed route service. We will also have information in there about the capital investments that will be needed to support our future network. And we'll be looking at different funding assumptions. We'll be kind of looking at some bookends. The Puget Sound Regional Council in Vision 2040 has a certain projection of anticipated transit service. That'll be one end. But then we'll also be looking at our budget projections and different levels of funding and what we might do at those different levels. Again, we are working really closely with Sound Transit, but there's other agencies that we're also working with, all the other transportation agencies in the region. We're touching all of them as we go forward. So we're really intended to be a well-coordinated plan. What's our process? So we basically have a 4-phase process, again, ending with the final plan in roughly the fall, late summer, fall of 2016. We just completed the discovery phase, and that was a phase during which we were reaching out, trying to get ideas from people. We were doing the visioning events. We had a big event downtown Seattle, but we also were in Federal Way and in Bellevue. And now we've really just entered what we call the alternatives phase. And this is where we start to think of ideas of what kind of service we might have in the future. Where we're at right now, and I'll go into more detail in the next couple slides, is we've taken a look at some different types of service and what it would look like if we emphasize different services. So we have a concept that looks at local, a concept that looks at frequent, and a concept that looks at what we call express service. And so we're in this alternatives phase, and this is really where we're looking at ideas, and then at the end of the alternative phase, we'll be doing some modeling. We'll be doing a lot of analysis, a lot of talking to people. Like I said, we just finished a phase of outreach. We're working really closely with technical staff. By December, we're hoping to try to really shape what we call our draft preliminary concept. How are we going to blend all of these services together in a network that works for the demands of the county, but also and works with Sound Transit and the other agencies? The preliminary plan will start to really take shape January 2016, and again moving towards the final plan to sync up ideally with Sound Transit's move towards the ballot. What we've done so far, how are we doing this? So again, we're really committed to try to work with people. We've created a technical advisory committee made up of staff from all the different jurisdictions in King County. We've met about 3 times so far. We have a community advisory group, which includes diverse representation across the county. They had to go through an application process. And they just bring a lot of perspective of different people and different types of travel in the county. We've been very active online. We've conducted multiple surveys. We're in a second phase of survey outreach right now. As I mentioned earlier, with community visioning events, and then the joint open houses that we also just had with Sound Transit. And then what is it really going to look like? What does it mean if we're moving towards a preliminary concept? How are we going to do that? So again, throughout the summer, we'll be meeting monthly with the technical advisory committees. We'll have a community advisory committee meeting, and we're also working on network performance analysis. We're gearing up for another round of what we call the regional technical advisory committees, where we really go into the communities. We'll actually be coming to Kenmore on July 21st, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on as well. But we'll be going to the different parts of the county to really sit down with staff and try to get some real ideas of what people think about how the cities might grow, what communities want, that kind of thing. And we're seeking to develop feedback on the preferred concept. And again, we're regularly meeting with Sound Transit. On a staff level, we're meeting every week, basically. And then on all levels of management, we're talking quite frequently. We're moving towards, in fall, we'll have more model results, more evaluation data, and that on our concept, which will help inform us move forward. And so, again, these are the 3 categories of service, if you will, that we've been looking at. And these are really, none of these would be in and of themselves a perfect network. It's really what's the combination of these types of services. Frequent is, similar to our rapid ride service, maybe about half-mile stop spacing, trying to be very frequent on major corridors. Express, Metro doesn't have a lot of Express right now. Those of you familiar with the Sound Transit Express service, say like a 522, these are services that run on major corridors, have even farther stop spacing. They're all day, 2-way, meant to really move quickly. That's where their name comes from. But they are different from Peak, which sometimes people think about in the sense it's meant to be 2-way all day. And again, would the Metro's future network, how much express service might it have? And then there's the local, and that's the type of service that goes a little bit more into the neighborhoods, reaches more people, but might have a little bit slower travel paths that way. So these are the kind of services that we're looking at right now to try to find a good combination. And how we're going to do that, again, is through outreach with folks, these continued technical meetings, coming out with data, to look at all of these things are leading us to help understand what types of service do well in what areas and how they match up with what communities envision for their future. For example, how will transit serve Bothell? To bring examples here into your community that you're familiar with, we know, as we look at what service might look like here, we take a look at what the transit landscape is now. 522 is a major travel corridor for this area. Right now, it's served by Sound Transit Express 522. Metro has a 312 route that makes some trips out here, and 372. Those are our current services. But what should that corridor have in the future? And then again, and how do we work with cities as they move towards their vision? And your downtown here, your project where you've realigned 522, you're doing a lot of great redevelopment in your downtown. Our planners are working with staff here to figure out, where do our bus services go? The new 185th corridor, for example, how does that match with what the city wants? How does our service interact with your visions for development? And these are the kind of conversations we want to keep having. And this is more of a near-term project. This is probably not a long-range plan per se, but it's an example of how we work with cities and how we would like to have conversations with you all in the future. And then again, the Bothell Park and Ride is on the map, recognizing that that's, I think, at about 98% is how we've tracked its utilization. It has 220 spaces right now. Another park and ride that's really critical for this corridor is the Kenmore Park and Ride, which is, I think, was at 106% of their 603 spaces. So those are very well utilized. Again, that's another topic our long-range plan will tackle, is starting to get at where, along which corridors, are there suggestions for increased park and rides? Where does the region need more park and ride spaces? So that's another question that the long-range plan is hoping to tackle. So again, those are just some examples. And basically, how do you get involved? As I mentioned, some of the best ways for us to get feedback from Bothell is I really highly emphasize these technical advisory committee, where we really work with technical staff. There's some other arenas going on, some other studies, the 145th Corridor Study. So all these opportunities for conversation, for us to hear what the transit interests are, the travel demand patterns. So basically, I'm just out here again to hopefully lay the foundation for our plan, let you all know that our process is out there. We're really trying to reach out, and we have a web presence as well. So we encourage you all to provide feedback. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Great, thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, council members. My name is Chris Rule, and I'm a planner in Sound Transit's Planning, Environmental, and Project Development Department. So I wanted to give you a little context about ST3, and it seems very appropriate now that you're considering a comment letter from the city. So where we are right now is in a phase of public involvement where we're looking for input on our draft priority projects list. Later this year, we will be advancing a final project list to be evaluated, studied in further detail. Later in this year and then in 2016, we'll be putting together what might be called a draft system plan and seeking more involvement and input on that so we can revise that over the course of 2016 and potentially put it on the ballot in November of 2016. And so as we're waiting for some dotted I's and crossed T's down in Olympia, we are thinking that we might have the legislative authority to move forward with that package in November of next year. So last year we adopted our long-range plan, which started to bring us to a point where we have a set of investments that we can make throughout the region that's hundreds of projects long. And for example, we have the 522 corridor on our long-range plan as a potential high-capacity transit corridor. Now we're at the point of where we're putting together a fiscally constrained plan and thinking about what could investments in corridors like 522 mean. Is it a bus rapid transit corridor, a long-range transit corridor? And to put Sound Transit system in context, currently we're carrying about 30 million riders per year. After University Link opens next year, as well as South 200th down south of SeaTac, we're expecting that to grow rapidly after our Northgate station opens and after East Link and Linwood Link and the south portion of our corridor opens. We expect that to grow very rapidly into the next decade, over 100 million riders per year. And so ST3 is really looking to accommodate growth into the future. So our PSRC tells us that by 2040, our cities will be growing very rapidly. We're looking, as we study these projects, what the future land use, what the future travel patterns might be like to inform how we study these corridors. So as we started to put together a package, our board left us with some core priorities to consider. So as you're putting together your comments as a city, you might be thinking about how your projects connect designated centers with high capacity transit, how they might contribute to increased ridership and access for people from varying modes of transit, how they integrate, as Lisa mentioned, with other service providers, other transit systems. So we've met initially with community transit as well as King County Metro in this region. Also, we're supporting transit-oriented development and looking for how our projects could do that, and really advancing logical next steps projects beyond our light rail spine that travels all the way from Everett to Tacoma. So what are the corridors that we should be studying in the future? And 522 currently falls into that category. So our draft priority projects list is really a first cut. From hundreds of projects, we're trying to get down to a few dozen that we can study in a great level of detail. So this is our starting place for a lot of outreach, developing a financially constrained plan, and the 2016 ballot measure. It'll include really representative alignments and profiles. So we won't know exactly where stations will be, but we want to get a general enough idea that we can tell communities which communities will be served and how, the quality of that and the likely impacts of those facilities. And the final list, when it's developed, we will have templates that go through the scope, the cost, the potential ridership, and really other criteria that those projects would be expected to meet, to give everyone a very close, specific idea of what those projects constitute. So some of the projects on our list now are realigned projects that we did not have the financial capacity to complete because of the recession. So some voter-approved projects. One of those that we were able to bring back in the budget is a contribution to a transit center here in downtown Seattle. I've heard interest of even including a larger transit center in this area from Kenmore and other cities. Enhancements supporting the existing system that are necessary as we grow. Corridors from ST2 high-capacity transit studies. These would take us to places like Burien and Renton, West Seattle and Ballard, Totem Lake down to Issaquah through Bellevue. And system-wide programs and studies. This includes things like an access fund that would allow us to make small investments in communities to improve both bike and pedestrian and bus transfer opportunities, as well as some small parking facilities, as well as more of those plans for the future. So in the East Corridor, we have a list sort of that's been rearranged by geography. And so those include projects such as BRT all the way from Linwood and connecting to SeaTac in HOV or managed lanes. The Totem Lake to Issaquah light rail corridor that I mentioned. There's Express supporting bus service. So we are thinking about how future bus service will be arranged. What's the amount of bus service we'll need to program as we build out our light rail system? How much of that will convert into bus service, and how much of it can we reprogram in other areas? As well as a Northern Lake Washington HCT crossing study. So right now we're building light rail across I-90. As we consider the future, does it make sense to have a 520 corridor, a 522 corridor, or something in between that crosses the lake? So in addition, some other projects that you might be interested in Bothell would include the connection between 522 and the light rail spine that's being built. So we've heard from a number of cities that the logical connection for them is at the 145th Street station on the border between Seattle and Shoreline. We're also studying infill light rail stations at 130th and 220th Streets. As I mentioned, we will be looking at what our bus service looks like in the future, as well as I-405 BRT. So the timeline moving forward, we have a survey online for general citizens at soundtransit3.org that's running through tomorrow. Another week beyond that is the deadline that we've set for letters from jurisdictions like yours to provide comments on the draft priority projects list. In August, we'll be advancing those priority projects for further evaluation. And in the fall and winter, we'll continue evaluating those projects and start to see what they look like when you start to combine them into a system. As far as our integration, working together with Metro, we meet about weekly to discuss how our services can best coexist in the future, the best way to provide quality services to citizens with some combination of express service and high-capacity transit service with local service. And we are continuing our analysis and data coordination to ensure that we're comparing apples to apples, basically. So getting there together has been our first motto moving forward as we do this integration. We each have our respective websites for people to stay engaged and provide comments. So that's kcmetrovision.org on Lisa's side. And on our side, the website is soundtransit3.org. And that provides both the project list right now as well as a survey that's going on through tomorrow. So with that, thanks very much. And I think I open up to questions for both Lisa and myself.
Good deal. Thanks, Chris. Thank you, Lisa. You use the word investments. I'm just curious, what is your highest weighted priority in regards to return? You showed a slide maybe 8 slides ago showing many different areas that you want to focus in on. Is there one that wins overall?
I wouldn't say there's a specific project that wins. Our board has made clear right now that their number one priority is completing that spine from Everett to Tacoma and out to Redmond. But I think as we evaluate projects, ridership becomes very important because it's tied to so many other goals of environmental, reducing greenhouse gases, as well as providing service to the most people throughout the region.
Well, you mentioned that we do have a letter coming to you, and so when you use the word investment, I want to make sure that the proper language is in there addressing what you see as the best return. So,
okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Other questions, comments? Councilmember Sandberg?
Lisa mentioned that our Bothell Park and Ride is near 100% capacity, and in one of our draft letters to Sound Transit, we are requesting inclusion in your priority list funding for a structured parking facility / transit center. So when something is an existing Metro King County capital investment, how does Sound Transit work with Metro to provide for seamless transit service at that, for example, at that park and ride?
Well, we work together, and actually the park and rides in the region, actually most of them don't have very clear ownership. They're often owned by many people. So we are almost, I would say, almost blind to who owns them, at least certainly in terms of setting up service. There are some arenas in which the ownership may come important depending how we move forward in terms of what we're looking at as a region and as different agencies in terms of managing park and rides and how we are going to address, the park and ride issue. I mean, a lot of the park and rides in the regions are overcrowded. It's expensive to build more park and rides. What is the whole gamut of strategies that we can apply there? But we are committed to really doing it as a region. There's a Puget Sound Regional Council is sponsoring an access assessment project to look at just access to transit in general in the region. Metros, actually, we're also conducting our own access to transit. Sound Transit, I know, just did a system access policy. So we're all really aware of this issue, and we're all really trying to work together in how we can, what strategies we can have to help it. But in terms of, new facilities, I mean, I think it's all in partnership in terms of how things will how we'll move forward on new projects or bigger projects.
Thank you. And I read in a local paper that there is a citizen group that's trying to promote high-capacity transit on 522 now. I think it's called SR 522 Transit Now. Maybe they have a Facebook page. And so I see in your presentation that there are plans to study high-capacity transit, but not to actually provide it in the near term. So what advice do you have to citizens or that citizen group about how they might elevate that perceived need from study to earlier action?
I think you're correct, first of all, that it is one of those next logical steps categories now, and I think there is a lot of energy up here in the North Shore area to call it a project rather than a study. So other than asking for exactly that, my advice would be to tie it to the goals that our board has laid out and showing it how it meets those goals.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lamb?
Thanks for your presentation. One of the goals that I didn't necessarily see was that that different regions have sort of be treated equitably in that. Is that no longer a goal within Sound Transit, that different regions be treated equitably?
We do have a sub-area equity policy, and so our board members generally do a good job of communicating with each other to make sure the priorities of each are represented. I think one of the challenges you face here in partly sort of caring about a lot of what happens in North King County as well as what happens in East King County is that you want to be communicating closely with both of those constituencies about your shared interests.
Right. So I guess I would just ask both of you, do you feel that Bothell, like just taking us because that's a community that we represent, gets a fair share of the money that's spent by both Sound Transit and Metro relative to other jurisdictions of the same size? Or do you feel that Bothell needs more investment in future things to catch up? Because I used to use both the Metro and the Sound Transit bus routes when I commuted to downtown Seattle when I used to work there. But when you look at, I think, our community and you juxtapose it against other communities, you could say, well, some of them, they just happen to be in a better place because they're where light rail is going. But I would just ask you, each of you, do you feel that for your respective agency that Bothell right now is sort of at the median? Is it underfunded or is it overfunded relative to other communities?
I'm probably not the best person to evaluate that since I don't live in Bothell. But I would say that for the people who use the 522, I've heard that it provides a quality of service, but they'd like to see it improved. And we're just a very young agency, and we're really just starting to scratch the demand that's out there for high quality transit service, which is why we're trying to expand so quickly.
I'm also not going to speak to equity or crunching numbers or things like that, but the 522 corridor is a very significant corridor. There's a lot of transit service on it. The 522 has a fairly high level of service. I take that corridor. There's a service every 5 minutes in the peak, but I am actually a very strong advocate that corridor needs more service. I think there's a lot of latent demand out there, and I certainly would like to see through our long-range planning process that we are making sure that communities have the right level of service, the service that they need. And funding is an issue, but at least we want to make sure we're identifying what that correct need is, and we want to be in line with what cities envision. So I would just encourage you to continue, public agencies, like the organization that you mentioned, getting there, getting visibility, but also continued conversations with both of our agencies, and particularly for us as we're moving on our long-range planning process. We haven't been in this position, we're not in this position very often, looking at, hey, what do we really want to do? What's the right thing to do? So I would like to think that we'll be able to start to answer those questions in terms of what level of service really do you need out here? The 522 is a major corridor. What other services are out here that maybe you're not getting that you would like? What other connections are there that maybe should be stronger than they are?
So I'll just stop really briefly. I think we are underserved relative to that. I think that the 522 corridor, which relies on that, is an extremely congested corridor. There are improvements that have been made to address that, but I think it's a major, I think relative to jurisdictions of our size in this area, we are not getting the same level of investment. I think we also have an issue with respect to those people. It's good if you work in Seattle. I think if you work in Bellevue or you work in Redmond, it's completely inadequate in terms of commuting time. And I think that needs to be addressed both with high-capacity transit and with additional services for buses. So that's, as somebody who does live in Bothell, that's my take.
Andy, Councilmember Rayam.
So thank you for coming. I have quite a few questions, but I'll try to make it quick. So do we have a staff member on your technical advisory committee?
Yeah. On the Metro?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I could look to staff. Yeah? Okay, good. Do we have anybody from the Bothell community on your community advisory committee?
I don't have that list in front of me, so I apologize. I will have to get back to you with that answer.
Okay.
And we have about 25 members, I believe, on the community advisory committee. But again,
Ma'am, I'm so sorry. We're recording the meeting, so if you wouldn't mind coming to the microphone.
Sorry about
and
that.
here he is to let us know.
I think there's about 25 members on the board. I don't know where they're all from off the top of my head, but we are also, there's lots of different representations that we were trying to get on that. So, there's 39 jurisdictions, so I don't know that there's not a representative from every jurisdiction. We're also trying to get different demographic groups. So I will have to get back to you as to whether there's actually a Bothell resident on that.
Even better would be maybe a map of the nearest person on the committee that's...
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, actually, well, there's a website on the community advisory group, and I don't know if the membership is listed on that or not. But yeah, I will get back to you on that.
So, as a frequent user of, well, it's usually Sound Transit, but I do use King County Metro as well. I can tell you it's an amazing difference to use the bus from Redmond to get back and forth to Seattle from Redmond from here. You miss the bus here and it's 45 minutes type of situation. If you're in Redmond, you don't even need to worry about a bus schedule. And I'd like to see that up here. Another thing, too, is I'm a little saddened that community transit isn't here with you guys. I don't know if you knew, but half of our city isn't in King County. And so the community transit piece and how we're bisected by two different counties has really kind of caused a loss for our community for transit, because there's the DMZ zone, basically, that we're in. And so I hope that's something that you guys can look at. I would like to have you guys come back with community transit and show us how you guys are all working together, because our community is really affected a lot by how you coordinate with community transit. I think it's great to look at a park and ride in Bothell, an expanded park and ride. I know that we were slotted to have one, and then we didn't get one with Sound Transit 2. So if that happens again, or if we don't have a transit center in this ST3, I won't be supportive of it. Just on my own opinion, not the full council, but just so you know. And then you mentioned, too, that you are starting to expand your scoping from regional growth centers to designated urban centers. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes. So we're looking at a variety. Our first priority, according to our enabling legislation, is the regional growth centers. But from there, we're looking at designated centers of all varieties.
Okay. So for the public, so what that means is in Canyon Park, that's a regional growth center. So that's where that's where you guys would focus your transit from Sound Transit, correct? And then our downtown is a urban growth center, which is a designated urban growth center that we designated, correct?
Yeah, what I would say is that both are important to us, but the demand for transit is quite important. So I think we're going to take a close look at a regional growth center, as well as a place like your downtown, where you're making big investments and you do have a lot of strong potential for ridership.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, because we've definitely focused on our designated urban center, not our regional growth center, for a lot of our current growth. So, all right, that's it. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Councilmember Rayam, I actually looked online, looks like there's 25 members of that board, 12 are from Seattle, the closest is Jeff from Woodinville. So, curious. Yeah.
Just one for up here in the 522 corridor?
Correct.
Okay.
Councilmember Evans.
Yes. Yes, thank you for the information. One question, you talked about the different services, and local services was mentioned. What constitutes local services? How do you define that?
So local service tends to not be quite as frequent. It runs on sort of smaller streets, not necessarily just the major arterials. It might stop more frequently. It's the type of service that people can usually get to a little bit more. It's usually closer to the house. It might sort of go through the neighborhood a little bit more and stop more often. Might be more helpful on more local trips to, say, like a local grocery store, whereas the frequent, and particularly the express, really focus on center-to-center connections. The local tries to hit more local destinations.
So we've had interest in a local service in our city. Would that be considered a local service? So is a local service city by city or area by? Is it conceivable that we could have a local service here in Bothell?
You mean just within the city? You mean like a circulator
in
or
the surrounding area? Right.
Sure. Yes, it can either be within a jurisdiction or can connect multiple jurisdictions. Circulators can be challenging from a productivity standpoint, but certainly we want to look at services that help provide what we call local circulation. Right. So whether that's accomplished by, routes kind of do better when they're connecting some destinations people want to get from one to another, but there's certainly trips along the way that make it valuable, that are important as well. And if they're providing that local circulation as they move along their path, then that helps accomplish that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Looks like yep, you're okay. Well, I appreciate you coming tonight. As we consider our letter, I think when you use the word investments, the number one investment or the return I want to see is congestion relief, I think, whenever it comes to transportation. So hopefully that's something that we can look at and consider. Appreciate your leadership and the task in front of both of you going forward over the next several months. Great. Have a good evening.
Thanks again for having us.
Next on our agenda is the visitor section. I do currently have 3 sign-up sheets. If there's others that have yellow forms, great, thank you so much. We can just turn them into the clerk, and I'll grab those as we move forward. First on the list is Brian Crouch. Mr. Crouch, welcome. As with all visitors, we allow 3 minutes for each speaker. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Brian Crouch. I live at 19828 95th Avenue Northeast in Bothell. I wanted to just give you a wrap-up about Startup Weekend, which happened May 15th at the University of Washington, Bothell. Approximately 100 entrepreneurs from around Greater Seattle area and even out of the country arrived in Bothell, many of whom had never set foot in this city before. It formed into 12 teams and created a company. Each team created a company over a period of 3 days. We had biomedical devices, websites, mobile devices, mobile apps that were all developed around the health technology space. And these all happened here at the University of Washington, Bothell on May 15th. A couple of quick stories from there. One of the winning teams, in fact, the first place team, came all the way from Canada. Dr. Ron Goldman, who is a pediatrician and a professor at the University of British Columbia, came all the way to Bothell to develop his idea, and he came in first. It's a clinical trial, kind of a Zillow for clinical trials, and it's going to disrupt that market quite a bit. It's actually quite exciting. That happened in Bothell. And I also wanted to share that one of the University of Washington Bothell students shared an idea that became a team, came in third place, and they have an optical vision sensor for mobile devices that would help people in countries where there are very few optometrists or opticians. And that's kind of a revolutionary idea. Actually, it's a wonderful thing. And that happened here in the city of Bothell. I want to specifically thank Assistant City Manager Peter Troutson, who, without his help, I would not have connected with University of Washington Bothell. It wouldn't have happened at this event. And also, thank you, Councilman Mayor Lamb. Sorry, I said Mayor Lamb by habit. Peter, if you wouldn't mind coming up, I'd like to give you this shirt. This is our logo that happened. These are the sponsors that gave us help so that this could happen, including some leading law firms. Peter, thank you very much for your help. Thanks for this shirt. It's extra large, by the way. All right. And I also wanted to mention that there were many partners from throughout the community, Washington Biotech Biomedical Association, the Economic Development Council of Seattle and King County, Economic Alliance of Snohomish County, all partnered in this event and help it to happen. I'd like to see this carry on. Right now, if you Google Bothell Startup, this event will be the 6 of the top 10 results. Now think about that for a second. Okay, that second's over. As Bothell Startup, I didn't want to just create an event. I'm trying to create a community. I'm trying to create a movement of startups in our town. Both my kids were born here, raised here. I'd like to see us grow and like to see innovation happen here, especially in the health category. So let's let Bothell Startup lead to companies that are succeeding here instead of just an event that happened in May. Just want to share that. I will also mention that moving forward, I'd like to very much well, I'm out of time, but I'd like to see us work towards a co-working space that will help cultivate and incubate those kind of startups and have that happen here and grow here. Anything I can do to help, please let me help.
Brian, thank you so much for your leadership. Appreciate you putting the event on. That is very impressive, and sounds like there are a lot of stories that are yet to be shared, and be curious to sit down with you and hear more about the vision that you put forward, and actually not just a vision, but reality. So thank you, Brian.
Anytime, thank you.
Next on the list is Emily Sprong, Friends of North Creek. Hi, Emily. Nice to see you again.
So I'm Emily Sprong, and I'm the Executive Director for Friends of North Creek Forest. And I'm just here tonight to give you a little update about what we've been up to during the first half of this year. We've been busy at the forest. We recently completed our 4th restoration site with the UW Restoration Ecology Network. The site is on the western edge of the forest near the county line. It's considered by many to be our best site yet, and happily for this year, it's shady and cool in that forested site. So far this year, we've engaged 532 volunteers and over 2,000 hours of service in the forest, which includes many hours from youth who are excited to take part in preserving the forest. We're strengthening our partnership with UW Bothell, and we'll be working with a variety of professors and their Office of Undergraduate Research to support research projects in the forest that will provide valuable experience to students as well as important data that will be used both to inform the master plan and our ongoing forest management. We recently received our 2nd year of funding from the Peach Foundation, and we've hired 3 education interns to help with our summer programming with the North Shore YMCA through that grant. These interns are also helping us develop classroom kits to support teachers who want to incorporate North Creek Forest into their curriculum. Another grant from the Washington Native Plant Society will allow us to add interactive signage to select native plants on our restoration sites to further educate volunteers and visitors. We're also in the process of hiring a stewardship coordinator to help manage our restoration sites, monitor invasive species, and help us engage even more volunteers. And last, but certainly not least, last week our legislators in Olympia agreed on a budget compromise that includes $1 million to purchase the last 3 parcels of North Creek Forest. There's still, the Senate still has to pass a capital budget bond bill to finalize that capital budget. But once that is finalized, this award, pooled with the existing funding, should be enough to acquire the remaining 22 acres of North Creek Forest. And we are thrilled to have Bothell's new Parks Director, John Keats, leading those negotiations. So it is really exciting to be at this stage of the process, and I want to thank you all for your support and leadership, as we certainly wouldn't have made it this far without you, the City Council. So thank you from Friends of North Creek Forest, from our over 500 volunteers, and from the many school children and other citizens who will visit this unique natural area for many years to come.
Thank you so much, Ms. Strong. Appreciate you presenting this evening, and congratulations on your hard work and reward. Next on the list is Sarah Glarum with the library. Nice to see you, ma'am.
Yes, I'm here tonight as a member of the Library Advisory Board, Bothel's very own, as an appointee. Thank you again. I came to share the good news that I heard at our last meeting in May. We only meet bi-monthly, by the way. The good news is that of 48 branches in the King County Library System, Bothell is the third highest circulating branch. Now, that is something to be really proud of, and I thought the council would like to know that. There's, I think, 1.2 million books that were circulated, well, books, CDs, DVDs, periodicals, that go through Bothell, and they went through Bothell in 2014. That doesn't mean 1.2 people actually came to the library, of course, but books that leave the shelf to go to Renton or to Federal Way or to Bellevue, or people who come in to get something from the shelf or from something that they've held, that's what counts as circulation. Now, so far this year, through May, the librarian, Karen Hardiman, the head librarian, who also is the head of the regional, it's called the cluster, and she has 4 libraries. She gave me statistics through May, and we're a little bit under this year so far, possibly because it's awfully hard to get to Bothell Library at the moment, as I'm sure you all know, and I'm going to get to that again in a minute. But we are almost at 500,000 of circulation through the end of May. And Karen was very proud about these statistics and gave me, you each get one of these. She counted out 7 very carefully. She holds them dearly. But it's a little bit of a boast card for each of you to know how great your library is. And of course you know that even if you live in Snohomish County, this is your library, King County Library System, and it's a great library. Now, I want to tell you, just in case you hadn't heard, that the library is hosting, together with your very own project manager, Ken G., will be hosting at the library on the 24th of July a lovely conversation and informational session on the project of Horse Creek. Because you better believe it, everybody who comes through the library door asks the librarian, what's going on out there? So the lovely thing is that we were able to coordinate with you, and it's on Friday afternoon at 2. We wish it could be on Saturday or Sunday. Then it would be standing room only. The city doesn't normally work on the weekends, but that's the other thing you need to boast about. Did you know that Bothell Library is open 7 days a week? The only time it's closed is on a federal holiday. And now, just to tell you, in the last couple of minutes, I got to be on the drill team for the King County. Did you see me in the parade? It was so much fun. And we love having this association. Our whole purpose is to help keep the community connected to the library, to know the resources. And it seemed like it was a good idea to let you know that.
Thank you for your enthusiastic presentation this evening. Any questions this evening, folks? Nope, seeing none. Thank you so much. Next item sheet, I have Mr. Todd Crooks.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you again for letting me appear here. My name is Todd Crooks. I live at 22318 3rd Avenue Southeast up in Canyon Park. I'm here to speak again about our Veterans Heritage Museum that we are hoping to find a future home for. I hope you all enjoyed your 4th of July and celebrated your freedom and thought about the veterans that cannot be with us today because they paid the price for that freedom. I hope that came into your thoughts. The city had a contest on Main Street with the merchants to decorate their front windows, and some friends of mine, Tom and Linda Dorsey, that run the Main Street Antique Store, recruited me to come down and help them out. So we kind of blew away the competition, I think. We kind of turned their whole front window into a tiny little museum there, and they ended up winning the competition, and they got this beautiful, huge, used to be a baseball, but now it's a trophy, but now it's a 4th of July trophy that they're going to hand out to the different businesses. But out of that, the Bothell Reporter did a story about their front window contest, and they kind of course, did a little spin-off on the museum. And they're going to come out with another article pretty soon about our museum and our search for a home. And I told her that the city is working, trying to help find a solution. And I know at the last meeting we talked about trying to get the city to kind of put either a public service announcement or something in the paper. So I was wondering if it would be possible for the council to be interviewed by her for that article and kind of kill two birds with one stone right there, because I know there were some concerns about the city, going out and helping out one organization. This way, maybe the newspaper can come to you and come in the back door and get the same message out there. I think it would be much better if the article would say that the city is also echoing this request for somebody in the community to help find 1,000 square feet and some support. So I'll send you her contact information, and I encouraged her, of course, to call you for an interview. So hopefully she'll follow through with that. The other item that is going on is that I got an invite from Mr. Trodson to meet. He's going to meet with the Historical Society this Friday, but I'm going to be out of town on a camping trip. I don't know if you got that email, but I hope that something can come of that. And also, I sent another email to Mr. Dembowski, our King County councilman, and asking him again to just kind of, get in the conversation and hopefully talk to you guys. I thought politicians love to talk, so I am kind of encouraging him to come and talk to you. So I don't know if you guys can reach out and tap him, but I've exchanged emails with him a couple months ago and try to impress upon him the urgency. Thank you. Any questions?
Great, thank you, Mr. Crooks. Councilmember Sandberg?
I don't have a question. Thank you again for your continued energy in trying to make this happen. I did want to point out that on our projected agenda on July 21st, we have a discussion on Veterans Museum location possibilities. Okay. And that's, again, July 21st.
Great. Thank you, ma'am.
Great. Thank you. So, did you have a question?
That's not during your camping trip, is it?
No.
July 20, okay.
Yeah. Doesn't last that long.
That's the end of my sign-up sheets. Is there anyone else who wishes to address council? Mr. Paler. Eastside Transportation Coalition?
Association.
Association.
But I'm not here speaking on their behalf.
Oh, okay.
I'm here as a Bothell resident. Dick Paler, 9013 Northeast 190th Street in Bothell. I'm really happy. I want to speak about the proposed Sound Transit letters that are on the agenda. And to that end, I really appreciate the questions that you were all asking the presenters. Those are the same questions that I think we should be asking, and then some. And also, just for those that might not know, I have a deep background in this topic. Since I was on the council in 2000, I've been involved in this topic for 15 years through representing the council when I was there at the Eastside Transportation Partnership, and since then representing Eastside Transportation Association, have a seat at that table. I enjoy seeing Councilmember Rayum at those meetings. We'll see you on Friday. So I have a lot of background. I would love to help the city in any way I can as we weigh in on this issue between now and November of 16. With regard to the list being that you were asked to provide, I think it's fine to go ahead and submit a list. But more importantly, I think it's also just as important to send a message to Sound Transit that, as Councilmember Lamb asked, we have absolutely not gotten our fair end of the bargain on the taxes. And as a starting place, I would suggest that the city should either ask Sound Transit or calculate it how we want. How much have the Bothell taxpayers paid since 1995? How much have we paid, and what have we gotten in return? It's just added up. I think there's a huge discrepancy. We are subsidizing Seattle's transit service. There's no question about it. And Mayor Freed asked about congestion relief. For many years, Sound Transit boasted about how they would help relieve congestion. And then when they got boxed into the corner, they finally backed off and said, well, we're really not trying to reduce congestion. We're trying to give people options to get out of congestion, which is fine. But if you look at their advertising materials, they are implying that they're making a big dent in congestion, or how much worse it would be if they weren't providing the service they're providing. A little context, Sound Transit alone gets about 50% or more of all the transportation taxes in the region go to Sound Transit. Sound Transit's The trips that they provide every day represent about 1% of the trips in the region. Metro carries 10 times as many passengers on their bus system as Sound Transit does on their buses. Believe me, and the buses at Sound Transit are the best investment that we have. And so we're putting 50% of the region's taxes towards a 1% market share. So that's some context that you need to maintain. I'll just close and say, in the letter, I wish that there would be a little bit of a different tone about, we're not endorsing Sound Transit 3 at this point. We're not necessarily happy with what we've gotten from Sound Transit to date, and we expect to be talking about that going forward. It isn't just about picking which projects out of your list that you're providing to us do we think is important, because that's allowing them to continue to set the agenda for this, and that's not how it should be working. And if nothing has changed at Sound Transit, why would we expect to get treated differently in the future? I think unless there's changes, and the last thing I'll leave you with is, think about board members being elected by the people that they're supposed to represent. It's an unelected board right now, and that's why we get the short end of the stick. It's heavily, heavily favored towards Seattle.
Oh, it's 12 out of 25, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Anyone else? No, great. Thank you so much for everyone. On to our consent agenda. One item was pulled, which was 15087. Is there a motion?
I would move the balance of the consent agenda.
We have a motion and a second by Councilmember Agnew. If everybody could place their vote. The clerk can display. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Councilmember Sandberg, you pulled AB 15087.
Yes, this is regards to an amendment number 7 to the city manager employment agreement, and I wanted to pull this out separately to have a separate vote. I won't be making a motion, but I will be speaking to when the motion is made.
Okay.
I would move the recommended action.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lamb, second by Councilmember Evans. Councilmember Sandberg.
So I will be voting no on this this amendment. I believe that our city manager is one of the highest compensated city managers in his peer group, and it was my understanding that we contribute to 2 retirement plans on his behalf, and so one of the contractual changes is to increase his contribution to one of the retirement plans, and so I will not be supporting the motion.
Okay. Others? Councilmember Lamb?
I will be supporting the motion. This works out to an impact of approximately $3,060 a year, or roughly $255 a month. I think that our city manager is one of the top 5 city managers in the state of Washington. I think this is an appropriate and modest way for us to show our appreciation of the work that he's done, and I support his leadership and support this modest increase.
For several years, I've been able to go down to Olympia and meet with many city managers and mayors and council members. And through the role as mayor, I also get to go to a lot of different regional meetings. We have a stellar city manager. There are good city managers around us, obviously, but the amount of progress we've been able to make in Bothell, the amount of positive things that have been happening over the last 11 years, I believe that he has been with the city of Bothell, has put us in a great position to build upon the 100-year history of Bothell to move 100 years forward. And we're seeing continued success of investment in the city of $100 million so far, probably actually $200 million so far. We'll probably see another $200 million over the next few years. So investors like the confidence that they see in the city, which is important to me, and also the citizens of Bothell. So I'll definitely be voting in favor of this motion. Anyone else? Councilmember Evans.
Yes, I seconded the motion and will support the action. I have been on the council about 8 years now, I guess the end of this year, and I have had an excellent working relationship with the city manager. We haven't always agreed on everything, but we can agree to get the issue resolved. I have worked with many city managers in my past career, and I do find our city manager to be one of the top city managers that I've worked with, and I think that's evident of what we've approved or completed in this city. I mean, as a council, we pass the motions and that type of thing, but it's really the staff who's got their sleeves rolled up and getting the job done, and we've seen that numerous times in the work that Bob and his staff have performed. And so I can't remember. I thought I saw a statistic over his career here with the city. It's been about a 1 or 2% per year increase that he's received, I think, if I remember the numbers right. And that's far below what the CPI is. So I believe we're very fortunate to have Bob in the city. I hope we can retain him. I think he does a great job for us, and has we've really accomplished a lot because of his efforts. So I will support the motion.
Great. Councilmember Rayum or Agnew? No? All right. Having everybody having a chance to speak, could place your vote, and the motion is to authorize the mayor to sign the proposed amendment number 7 for the city manager employment agreement with Robert S. Stowe. Can display passes 4-2. Great, thank you. I look forward to signing that this evening. Next on the agenda is AB 15092, continued public hearing to consider a planning commission recommendation on the 2015 periodic plan and code update. Our public hearing is open, and Mr. Hassler and Bruce Blackburn and Dave Boyd are all with us this evening. I know. We're well in good hands.
Good evening, Council. I have a very brief presentation for you this evening, since this is your 8th meeting on this issue. I'll try and go through the slides quickly for you. As the Mayor has already stated, this is the 2015 Periodic Plan and Code Update. In your Council packet this week, we have an updated matrix for you showing Council direction provided on June 16th, proposed plan and code amendments, including that Council direction, proposed Council findings, conclusions, and action, and a proposed ordinance. As part of tonight's Council review, we're asking that you complete review of the outstanding issues and provide us direction for each. We've provided you land use language in support of reducing impervious surface coverage as part of your direction, and addressing PSRC comments that were received in a letter that we gave you on June 16th. In the natural environment element, there is language regarding water quality. Within the urban design element, there is policy and code language regarding cut-through traffic. And on that issue, we've provided you with 3 different options. I think that's the only issue that we've given you options that you really need to deliberate as far as options. And then in the transportation element, there's language addressing new information, PSRC comments, and council direction that you gave to us from June 16th. I should note that you could approve, if you chose to, you could approve all of the staff proposals with the exception of the cut-through traffic as a group, because that's the only one we've given you the options on. We do recommend that you take public testimony tonight because there is new information being presented. The public needs to have a comment to address that. But following that, we recommend that you close the public hearing on the 2015 Periodic Plan and Code Update, and after deliberations, approve an ordinance adopting the 2015 Periodic Plan and Code Update. That's it for my presentation. We would be glad to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to open up to the public. First on the sign-up sheet is Mr. Mike Johnson. Yeah, sure.
Thanks,
Mike.
Council. The name is Mike Johnson again, and good evening. I apologize for not coming for the last couple meetings. I had a family emergency that basically a death in the family, so I apologize for that. What I will say is I don't support the language that I've read today in terms of the document, because I believe that it recommends, and I'm recommending that you keep the existing language with the slight modification that I talked about in my second letter to you that said consider. And the reason why I'm concerned is that the staff language increases the interpretive standard, which increases the acceptable residential traffic by 2.5 times, from 2,000 vehicles per day to 5,000 vehicles today. Really, the issue is about ensuring that fire and life safety have the ability to respond and can be maintained without reducing the quality of life in Bothell. And I would contend that giving, I shouldn't look at the clock, it takes time away. I shouldn't talk about it either. But I would contend that the language that was proposed actually does provide that. All you need to do is engage staff and the fire department officials and fire life safety in doing that. Also understand that forecasting traffic is not an exact science. Engineers make judgment, and if they're wrong, the city can't correct the situation. Once it occurs, the only way it can be corrected is by marginally putting in traffic calming measures, speed bumps. That doesn't solve the problem. When a neighborhood goes from 2,000 to 5,000 vehicles, you may think it's a vehicle every 6 minutes, but that's because that's what that traffic analysis assumed. The real issue may be outside issues, like 405 tolling may cause more demands through our street system and causing the quality of life issues for Bothell. So without going into a lot of detail in here in terms of the notes, and I did take a lot of notes here, I think that there's enough language in here that does actually try to promote the actual acceptability of cut-through traffic within the language, and I don't think that that's where we want to be. I believe that, as I said once before, that once 405 tolling starts, we'll find that there's an increase in bypass demand that will cut through many of Bothell's neighborhoods, and I'd rather protect the peace and serenity of my Bothell neighbors than create a nightmare of cut-through traffic, and I don't think we should fix something that isn't broken. I believe that the word consider in that text will actually correct the issue for fire and life safety, and those council members that are concerned that fire department can't respond, we are making that ability that they can get the response in. The issue is how to protect the quality of life of Bothell citizens. So I'd ask you to really consider that it does provide for fire and life safety response.
Would you entertain a question, Mike?
Yeah.
Great. Councilmember Lamb? First, I'm sorry about the loss in your family, and I did want to, I appreciate you taking the time to come here tonight, because the one question I wanted to ask you is, the hearing examiner's interpretation has been that a single additional trip would be impermissible under the existing language that we have. Is your goal that that would remain? Do you agree with that interpretation, or do you believe that there's a way to provide, I mean, given that that's how he's interpreting it,
right?
What is it that I'm assuming that you don't agree with that, but I'm wondering, what would you propose to be able to address that? Because it seems like there's probably a medium between a single additional trip and 100 additional trips.
Right.
That would be acceptable.
I honestly believe that there is a way to do that, and it probably needs to be remanded back for a careful, a thoughtful consideration of it by, the neighbor. I'm not going to say the neighborhood, but maybe the planning commission, in terms of how do you address that issue. I once said to the council way back when I was there, that potentially if you were on an arterial and you went into a neighborhood you're trying to cut through, and you put back on the same arterial you came from, that isn't cut through. But that is one trip that went through that neighborhood. And could that be considered that way? There is some language in here that talks about if we put an arterial that connects from one arterial to another without frontage, without actually housing frontage, that is a way that you could actually look that might be okay. But if you take a look at the existing system that we've got today, houses front almost everywhere. And so it's a very difficult thing to say, if I build this neighborhood, I'm not going to get 100 trips. It's not the development that causes it with the impact study. It's actually the surrounding issues that actually force the high numbers of traffic, like the 405 and other development. So it's not an easy thing to do. I think that there's a way to deal with it, and I don't agree that one trip interpretation should be considered that way. I think it should be a little looser than that.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Sandberg.
Do you have in front of you the earlier language that you proposed? And if so, can you read that? And where it fits in with, consider.
So I went to page 18 of your packet, which is, if you're looking online on the PDF, it's page 100. It's UDP 10. And I believe in the description, it talks, if there's a highlighted yellow piece that says when required, which the fire marshal said, a fire marshal or fire representative said they would not put in. I would agree with that, because I think the idea is that could limit the sidewalks, for example. But just before an emergency, in the last part of that line, if you would put in the word consider, and consider emergency and fire life safety access, that deals with the issue that a neighborhood that had an access and the fire department said that they didn't use it, it wouldn't be required. This requires it in every case. And by the use of the term consider, you can deal with that problematic issue. But if the fire department says we need this, it should be a non-issue. The question is, how do you design it? Use of bollards and other features to prevent vehicles from going through, and the neighborhood issue was they were going through it because we put up a little sign. So I think it's the matter of the application. And truly, if fire and life safety need an access, this does provide it.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Mr. Bob Hurst.
Hi, thank you for listening to me. I'm a property owner up on West Hill. My address is 8520 Northeast Bothell Way. I'd like to encourage the council to go ahead and accept the resolution of the Planning Commission 15-092. I'll benefit from that. I think everybody in the community will benefit from smaller lots, more lots, lower price homes that come from that. I think it's simply a realization of the way the economy's gone right now recently. Everything's so expensive. Housing prices have risen 15 to 20% just recently. They say the median price home in Seattle now is $500,000. I have all sorts of young friends that don't even dream of owning a house. They're going to be sharing apartments from now on. So the call for higher density is just upon us, and this is a good way to start. I don't know if it's appropriate now to talk about the Wayne Golf Course, but I'd like to encourage the council to do everything possible to make sure that that's set aside for public use one way or the other. An idea, instead of using it as a park, is to maybe find a private operator to run it continue as a golf course as an interim measure, just to keep it alive and keep the ground kept, rather than putting the burden of maintenance on the city. It's a wonderful place. Bothell's done a terrific job of growing the city, but we haven't done enough to a commensurate amount to keep our public spaces. And I think just this one space, just the Wayne Golf Course, either both halves, one half, kind of makes up, it's a counterbalance for what's been done downtown, and it really needs to be part and parcel of all the development that happened downtown. It's a great opportunity to balance what's gone on there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurst. That comes to the end of our sign-up sheet. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on 15092, the periodic plan and code amendments? Anyone else? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments? Seeing none, if everybody could place their vote. Hit clerk display. Maybe. Passes unanimously. Any deliberation, council? Councilmember Sandberg.
I had a question of staff regarding the new language. And this would be on page 100 regarding language to address the hearing examiner's interpretation of cut-through traffic as being greater than one trip. So it looks like in here we have some, you're basing this 100 cut-through vehicle trip per day bright line as the thing that would trigger modifying street design, and if that were to happen, if there was a 100 trip increase, what does the proponent do to modify the street design? I mean, people still are going to feel an impact of cut-through traffic, whether it's 100 trips per day or 50 or 25. So I was unclear about that language. What does this mean, the proponent shall modify the street design?
So it could mean not making the connection, or it could mean adding traffic calming or other devices that would, in the traffic modeling, show a decrease below that threshold.
And so, and do you know, for example, like, I mean, most people don't think about it in terms of 100 vehicle trips per day increase. They think about it in terms of next to me is going to be built a 25 home development or a 30 home or 100 home development. What size home development translates into a 100 trip per day increase if we're talking about single family homes?
I don't have a number for that off the top of my head. We did, 100 sounds like a lot, but 10 homes is total trip generation over the day. But the 100 trips per day would amount to, equate to, when averaged over time, one trip every 6 minutes during the peak hours and less during other hours. So.
Okay. Okay, that's all the questions I have, since that's our new material for the night.
Great, thanks, Tris. Anyone else? Seeing none, entertain a motion.
It sounds like they need some direction for us on that traffic issue. So I was wondering if staff could bring that up. Is that correct?
Yes, there's basically three options. There's the Planning Commission recommendation, there's the council direction from 2 meetings ago to go back to the original language, and then the direction from last time to come back with some alternative language, which is this 100-trip threshold.
Dave, just for clarity, was the Planning Commission recommendation to increase the trips as well? Was that in the Planning Commission recommendation, or is that new? Is that in the third option?
The Planning Commission recommendation retained language that discouraged cut-through traffic, but didn't create a bright line. It left it up to staff's judgment to determine whether a connection would create a serious enough impact to prevent that connection.
So, for example, TR4, where you have the adjustments in the current street volumes, is that from the Planning Commission, or is that from the most recent staff proposal?
All of the new language in the transportation element is post-Planning Commission.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Evans.
Yes, just one quick comment. This is on page 137 of our agenda packet under transportation element. And this is just a comment. I don't know if there's any language that needs to be added, but it makes the comment under the bullets of item 21, right before 422. It says removal of the requirement that medians be landscaped due to high maintenance costs. And I know we discussed that, and there are certainly pros and cons to that. I think ideally we'd all like to see landscape medians, but the reality is they're just beyond our ability to maintain them and that type of thing. So I support this language, but as I was out and about the last few weeks, I did notice in another city that they do have the same type of stamped concrete medians throughout the city. It's becoming pretty common for the same reason as ours, that they're difficult to maintain. But I did notice in this city that occasionally they would have, I don't know what to call it, maybe an art element or something in this median. For example, there was a bicycle in one of the medians, not your typical bicycle, but it was a structure. It was a bicycle made out of pipe and wheels. It was kind of an art piece, and it looked really nice. In another location, there was some kind of a design. I guess it looked like a flower to me, but it seemed to break up that whole idea of concrete, which I think we have to have. But I guess I don't know if we have to add language here or not. But I'd like to see the consideration be given to other alternatives or amenities such as artwork to visually improve the aesthetics of our medians. I just think that we need to do something. I don't think they look good the way they are. They're functional, but I think if there's anything we can do to improve those, and I do think there are some examples in other cities and things that we can do to do that. So I guess I don't know if it's necessary to add that language or if that's just a interest that I think maybe the staff can look into that and see how we can improve the medians beyond just the stamped concrete.
Would you like to add language tonight or have pass this tonight and bring that back for further consideration?
I could add to that sentence, at the end of that sentence, consider other alternatives or amenities such as artwork to visually improve the aesthetics of the median. And I'll put that in the form of a motion. If there's no other discussion.
I didn't see any further discussion.
I don't know if there's any other discussion on it.
Do we want to do that as an amending motion to the main motion?
I think he's going to make a motion totally to move.
If
hold on a second.
I can certainly make that motion to adopt the plan
with that change.
With this item added.
You would also need to make a motion that would address which option to go to regarding the traffic issue we discussed prior with Mr. Johnson, whether Planning Commission recommendation.
And I guess I'm still interested if there's more discussion on that item on the council, because I'm not sure which way I'm going to go on the transportation at this point. I'd be interested in any more discussion the council has.
Okay. For me, I would suggest to go with the Planning Commission recommendation on that item.
So to facilitate the conversation, I'll make a motion to approve an ordinance adopting the 2015 periodic planning code update with the language that Councilor Evans just articulated in terms of medians and supporting the Planning Commission recommendation on the cut-through issue.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Councilmember Sandberg?
I'd like to make an amending motion. Instead of accepting the Planning Commission recommendation on cut-through traffic, which was to strike the language entirely from the comp plan, I would like to propose that on page 100 of this agenda packet, use the language as presented for UDP 10, which we discussed at the last meeting, and have it read, due to the difficult topography within Bothel's neighborhoods and the reality that Bothell residents wish to discourage cut-through traffic on residential neighborhood streets, it is the policy of the City of Bothell that the residential street pattern shall not emphasize a network of streets that would promote neighborhood cut-through traffic, but should accommodate non-motorized connections and consider emergency and life safety access. Furthermore, I would not support any inclusion of the language regarding the hearing examiner's position and to not include any kind of bright line language about 100 cut-through vehicle trips per day.
I'll second.
Okay. Anybody want to speak to your motion?
Sure. So last time we met, Councilmember Lamb had provided the proposed language that's underlined there as a compromise to the proposed language coming from the Planning Commission and the conversation that we were having up here. It also incorporates Mr. Johnson's code change suggestion, and I believe it it deals with the issue of preserving the quality of life within our neighborhoods, but allowing staff analysis to guide when those connections are necessary for public safety. And I think all of the additional language is too prescriptive for comprehensive plan, and I'm concerned about the underlying motion, which is to strike that protective language altogether from the plan.
Can I make a point of parliamentary inquiry here? So I'd ask the maker of the motion then, so your proposal is UDP 10 as drafted on page 100, and is that including, that's what you would add to the existing motion, which is to accept the Planning Commission's recommendation, but with this language? Is that your motion?
So yes, the UDP 10 language, and then it is reflected and repeated throughout the appropriate sub-area plans as well. So if I'm to understand the motion that's on the floor, the Planning Commission recommendation was to strike all of the language regarding discouraging neighborhood cut-through traffic from the urban design element and from the sub-area plans. Is that correct?
I don't think that is correct. I think it was to take it out of the individual sub-area plans, but it retained it in the urban design. It modified it, but retained it in the urban design. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry for engaging staff, but I just wanted that was my understanding, and when I made that motion, that was my understanding, is that it's still in the plan. It's just not repeated in each individual sub-area.
So, but the Planning Commission recommendation strikes the language.
From the sub-area plan.
From the sub-areas, not the overall language.
I'll just read it. Revised policy UDP 10, related policies and actions in the transportation element. Eliminate redundant policies in the sub-area plans and amend BMC 1218.180AB to maintain protection of neighborhood streets from cut-through traffic while eliminating provisions that have prevented logical neighborhood connections.
That's the Planning Commission recommendation?
The
Okay.
recommendation.
And so does your motion support the language that I've presented in UDP 10 that I just read, that's on page 100?
That's what I was asking. Is I support the Planning Commission recommendation. I'm considering, and I may support your proposed addition. I mean, the UDP 10. I think that's consistent with what the Planning Commission has recommended.
However, you struck the language that says when required.
That was per the fire marshal. That was his recommendation. I added the word consider.
Yeah.
And I would like the language repeated in the sub-area plans where they exist currently.
Is that your motion? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
And basically, the following 3 paragraphs or so are completely eliminated as well. Is that correct? So
Correct.
It's just that one paragraph. Councilmember Ram, do you wish to speak to your second?
I think she covered it pretty well.
Okay.
When I speak, so I won't be supporting this, but I would support it. I would support the revision that Councilmember Sandberg has articulated if it's limited to UDP 10, and I would support that if she made that as a motion following this.
And can I ask a friendly question? What is the resistance to not repeating it in the sub-area plans?
I think it was the same logic of the plan. I mean, I accepted the logic of the Planning Commission that it was redundant, that if it's the policy of our city, it's the policy of our city, and it doesn't need to be restated in every sub-area plan.
And I guess I would counter that when the community originally created the 94 document and they wanted to emphasize how important it was to reduce neighborhood cut-through traffic, they specifically asked for that language to be repeated through the sub-area plans. And so a little redundancy is, in my mind, not a bad thing.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Evans, do you wish to speak?
The only concern I have is the staff review of this without giving some level of review at the staff, how they evaluate the number of cut-through traffic that's permitted and not permitted. I think without some threshold there, it, in my mind, would make their jobs more difficult. So that's the only hesitation I have. Additionally, I like the language. It had some threshold in there. So obviously, one trip isn't going to cut it, isn't the right language, but some language in there should be in effect to that. But
Okay. So everybody's had an opportunity to speak on this. Is everybody clear of the amendment on the floor? Or would you like me to repeat? Clear? Okay. If everybody could place their vote for the amendment. And clerk display. Motion fails 4-2. You still have the floor, Councilmember Sandberg.
Thank you. I know that we have discussed all the issues in the matrix, and so I am not going to make an amending motion for everything I lost on. I'm going to limit my next amending motion to an issue that is very important to me. And I would like to make an amending motion to this comp plan update to provide for option A as presented by Arch for affordable housing in the Canyon Park Business Center, plan designation increase to residential activity center.
So we have a second by Councilmember Agnew.
Okay. And like I said, there are many points that I lost on the comp plan discussion, but this one is so important. We are putting a designation of potentially 100 units per acre in an area that currently does not allow any residential development. And housing affordability is in the paper nearly every day about how people are being forced out of the rental and ownership market. And these aren't just, we like to think of it as low-income people, and somehow we're burdening an area with low-income housing. Now, this is affordable workforce housing. And I feel, and not only is it affordable workforce housing, it is affordable workforce housing in a designated regional growth center. And so I feel like we should take the opportunity now in the comprehensive plan to provide a small fraction of affordable housing when we are upzoning that area to potentially 100 units per acre where no residential zoning existed before.
Thank you so much. Well spoken. Any comments? Councilmember Lamb? Who am I?
So I will be opposing this motion. I think that we have a city council currently that consists of 5 members from King County, and myself and Councilor Evans are the only people who reside in Snohomish County. What this motion would do is have the only requirement for affordable housing techniques to be placed in the Snohomish County portion of Bothell. And I think that's wrong. I think that's inequitable. I think if we want to have a global solution on affordable housing, that we should look at that global solution. RAC zoning is not single-family zoning. I think what people are talking about right now, I mean, when you look at the apartment mix in the city of Bothell, I think the affordability index is much more manageable than it is for single-family homes. Where we've seen the price appreciation right now has been in people who are starting out and trying to buy their single-family homes. There's actually a fairly significant mix of construction in that. What you're talking about in RAC is requiring of only one half of our city and one portion of one half of our city, a requirement that we oppose nowhere else, by a council that is a majority of people who live in one part of the city, and they're putting the affordable housing in another part of the city. I disagree with that, and I won't be supporting the amending motion.
Councilmember Agnew.
I will be supporting the motion. When we looked at this comp plan, the only thing I felt was lacking was affordable housing. I think we have some other things in here that will be controversial, but they weren't lacking. We had a discussion about a month ago. A gentleman from March came up and talked to us, and he said that if you don't put it in the comp plan, it's not going to happen. You can't revise it. You can't go back. A majority of our affordable housing is in King County right now. We have very little in Snohomish County. I agree with Councilmember Lamb that it should be unilateral. It should be across both counties. It should be in King County and it should be in Snohomish County. You know, the American dream was you get a job and you buy a house and you raise a family. I don't know how people can buy the houses nowadays. You know, you look at some of the houses that are for sale, and they're $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 houses, and it's got to be tough for people. I don't think I have a son that lives down in Eugene, Oregon. He'd love to move back up here, but he can't because of the housing market. I think we need to address the affordable housing in the city of Bothell. We're not a small town anymore. You know, we're close to 50,000 people. We need to grow up a little bit. We need to change our transportation issues. We need to change a few things, but I think affordable housing is one way we can make a decent change in this city. So I will be supporting the motion.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Ram.
So we heard earlier tonight from Sound Transit and King County Metro about our bus service, and we talked a little bit about Regional Growth Center. Our only Regional Growth Center within the city is in Snohomish County, so our likelihood of having good transit service to that area is important, especially if you're looking at a place to actually site or intentionally put affordable housing in. Now, affordable housing is not code for low-income housing. Affordable housing is for normal public people that, you know, to reduce the amount of commutes that you have, you need to have people live close to where they work. And I can't think of a better location, honestly, in the city of Bothell other than the, Canyon Park area. So I do support the motion that has been raised for adding it in for the Canyon Park and the Country Village area.
Councilmember Evans.
Well, we do have affordable housing in Snohomish County. I don't know the number of units, but I know that it's there as compared to what it is in King County. And I appreciate the concern for affordable housing. I think it is an important concern. The one item that was mentioned, that yes, this would be a good place to put it, but it kind of came up as kind of a last minute, maybe not a last minute, but certainly something that was considered towards the end of our review. And the comment was made, you know, we could do it in the comprehensive plan, and maybe that's a great place to do it, or we could look at it when we actually do the rezone of that area, and when we do the plan of that area, which, and we heard both sides of that equation. Some of the property owners saying they didn't feel like they could support that in their developments and things. But we are going to comprehensively plan that area over the next 2-3 years, whatever the case may be. So I see both sides of the equation, and yes, this is an opportunity to put it in now in the comp plan, but there's also an opportunity as we go through the planning process for this area. And I think it was Mr. Hurst brought up the idea of the cost, or someone mentioned the cost of a home in Seattle at $500,000, but it also mentioned the cost of a home in Snohomish County. I think it was certainly considerably less than $500,000. So I agree with the comments from the council that we need this, and I'm not saying that by not supporting this motion that we're not going to have affordable housing in that area, because we still have that opportunity to look at that as part of that comprehensive plan process for that area, which to me is another time to look at it and consider it for that area. So that's all I have.
Great. So I'll be the last to speak on this. I remember about 11 years ago during a debate when I was first running for council, the conversation was about affordable housing, and the answer by the city of Bothell at that point was our affordable housing is through mobile home parks. And I think that's still our policy today. And I think this is a last-minute afterthought. And I think as a council, I'm as much to blame as each one of us up here. We need to have a real affordable housing policy with the city of Bothell. I'm not going to support this motion, but I would absolutely support on as soon as possible for staff to come back with a conversation on affordable housing in the city of Bothell that is real, that treats family with absolute respect, and allows people to live within our community that are looking for homes, just as Councilmember Agnew talked about the American dream that everyone should be able to attain. So let's come back with a real policy that spreads across the entire city of Bothell and can be a model for the entire state, if not nation. So that's my hope and support. And so for this evening, everyone has had a chance to speak. The motion was made by Councilmember Sandberg, seconded by Councilmember Agnew. I asked everybody to vote. And if the clerk can display, it fails due to the lack of a majority. Councilmember Sandberg, the floor is still yours.
So at this point, does anybody else have any other amending motions? Okay, well then I'll just hold, because I'll speak on the underlying motion, but I have no more amending motions.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Rayam, did you nod yes?
I should have asked this of staff, but I will just. So I have two amending motions. The first one is an amending motion to UD1 to add the paragraph UDP10 that Councilmember Sandberg requested to be added to each sub-area, but I'd like it to be added to the urban design element.
I'll second that motion.
So is it as she read?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Not when required, but consider.
Sure. Anyone wish to speak to that? Councilmember Evans, do you have a question?
And that's being added to the urban design element, not the other elements?
That's the motion, yes.
Great, thanks.
Seeing no further comments, the motion is to add UBP 14 as read by Councilmember Sandberg prior in the meeting. Right?
UDP10.
Yeah. I did say 10, didn't I?
I thought you said 10.
I said 14. Maybe I just slur. Okay, UDP 10. 1-0. Everybody can place their vote on the amending motion. Clerk display. Passes unanimously. You have a second amendment?
I do. Just 1 second. I lost my spot. Sorry. It's for the lot clustering section. Hold on 1 second.
Staff, do you know where the lot clustering?
Oh, here it is.
Okay.
On page 6, I would like to make an amending motion to strike lot rounding from
Second.
the language.
Second.
Which paragraph is that in?
It's the one with the red text. It's in the page
Oh.
6 of this.
I don't have red. I have black and white.
Oh, sorry. It's page 88 out of 230 of our packet. And it's number 3, kind of the top of the page there. It's the paragraph where it's underlined. The rest of it's fine. It's just lot rounding is that I'd like to delete.
Okay, so you had a motion. Was there a second?
Yes, there was a second.
And were you the second, Councilmember Sandberg?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Wish to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I have no idea what lot rounding means.
So I'll offer a, like right now in the city of Bothell, we don't round up for lots. So if you were to get 1.9 units, you would get 1 unit instead of going to 2 units. The lot rounding is the same as mathematical rounding. It allows you to round. If it's 0.5 and above, it would go up. If it's 0.4 and below, it would go down. That's what lot rounding is. So I won't be supporting the motion.
Okay. Neither will I. Councilmember Evans or Sandberg?
I feel that we allow for a lot of other flexibility with the other language, clustering, plan unit development, low-impact development, lot size averaging. We haven't had a lot of conversation on lot rounding, and so I feel like the other list of options provides for enough flexibility, and we could look at lot rounding in the future.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Agnew? No? Everybody's had a chance to speak. If everybody could place their vote for their removal of lot rounding. A yes would be to remove, a no would be to leave as is. The clerk can display. Fails 4-2. Councilmember Ram, do you have another motion?
No, that was them. Thanks.
Okay, great, thank you. Any amending motions, Councilmember Agnew? Any amending motions, Councilmember Evans? Okay, so the underlying motion is as is. Councilmember Sandberg, you asked for a chance to speak on the underlying motion.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank staff and the Planning Commission and all the members of the public who have made comments. It's been a very involved process, and I know everybody involved has worked very hard, so thank you very much for that effort. I'm disappointed that there were certain things that were not added into this comprehensive plan. Obviously, I'm disappointed about affordable housing. I don't feel it was a last-minute afterthought. I brought this up very early on in our deliberations with questions provided to staff. We have had this conversation in our community for years, even dating back to the downtown revitalization plan, where we chose not to incorporate housing affordability goals in the downtown plan. Also, we have a long-standing housing strategy plan. So this is not a new topic. It's just a topic that we continue to not address in our many planning documents. The other concern that I have is that we are exceeding our population targets by a significant amount in this update. We have population and employment targets given to us from the state for both population and employment. Prior to this plan update, we had met both population and employment targets for King County, met the employment and over provided for population in King County, and then with Snohomish County we met the employment targets but not the population targets, and we've over provided, well over provided for the population targets in Snohomish County, and what people are saying is that it seems like we're providing for a lot of population increase, and yet we still feel issues about our quality of life. We hear a lot about transportation impacts on Riverside Drive and in the Waynita Valley, and so people feel as though growth keeps on coming, and yet the infrastructure and the amenities are not matching the growth. And I think that we missed opportunities in this plan to provide specific language to address that. And not only are we meeting and exceeding our targets for population and employment, we've also created placeholder language in the document to look at increasing intensity in other areas as future areas of study for future comp plan items like the Nike Hill area, which is 228th and Meridian. And I think that's a huge mistake because we've got placeholder language to look at changing the zoning in that area. Well, we haven't even experienced full build-out in our downtown. The planning for the Canyon Park area is slated for next year or beyond, and now we're talking about potentially increasing intensity in another part of the city. And so I'm disappointed by that. We removed a lot of language from the natural environment element, I feel, unnecessarily. There's a lot of good language in there that speaks to the community's vision for protecting the many features of our natural environment, and to just say that it's incorporated, or those issues are incorporated in other documents. To me, it reduces the importance of what the community's vision was there. I'm concerned about the changes to the language for discouraging cut-through traffic in residential neighborhoods. And so, and there's others. There were a lot of things on that matrix that I just removed from consideration because I didn't want to take council's time just to have them voted against anyway. So those kind of capture my highlights about what I feel are major missing points and changes in this update.
Great, thank you. Others wish to speak to underlying? Councilmember Lamb?
So I want to thank our staff, and I want to thank our community for participating actively and throughout this process. This is, and our Planning Commission in particular, they did a lot of really hard work. The comprehensive plan is a huge document. I asked our former community development director, I'd like to have a hard copy of that, and I think I asked him on a Friday for the coming Tuesday meeting, and he said that's not going to happen. And normally he was extremely accommodating, and I was like, I don't understand. Like, what are you saying? He's like, it's just physically so large that we can't, like, between Friday and Tuesday's meeting, print it all out and get it into a binder and get it organized. It's that physically big. And at the next meeting, he brought it to me, and I knew what he was talking about. It's this huge, it looks like a federal budget. It's just a massive binder. And so I think that a lot of the changes that were made, we strengthened the language on clean water here, but a lot of the revisions were made to make this document readable and workable and accessible to the average person in the city of Bothell, or the person who's trying to build to deck or to expand their home. It needs to be understandable. When I was in law school, we had a one whole class on the idea of warning labels, and there's when you're putting a warning label on a product, if it gets to be too long, people don't read it. People don't pay attention to it. And there's a fine art of balancing repetition and redundancy with significance. And I think that we have not done it perfectly, but I think we've done a good job with this comprehensive plan, and I support it. With respect to there's two issues I want to touch on specifically. The issue of affordable housing, to be clear, the proposal in front of us tonight was to put it a requirement only on one portion of Snohomish County. It was not to do it citywide. It was to put it on a single portion of King County, and it's a portion that is going to be, I think, very conducive to workforce housing already because it's in the middle of a business park. I think we're likely to see that kind of housing without some additional government requirement, and it would have made Snohomish County the only part of our city that was subject to an affordability requirement. Snohomish County should be treated fairly, and it should be treated equitably with the rest of the city. I agree with the mayor that we should look at this holistically and not single out one county for an affordability requirement. I also think it's important to understand that RAC housing has nothing to do with buying your first home. They're two completely different products, and one has nothing to do with the other. So saying, like, well, if we don't put affordability requirements on RAC housing, people won't be able to afford their first home. One has nothing to do with the other. Finally, when we talk about growth and bringing people into Bothell, one of the really great things about our city is that at our best, I think we welcome people into our city, and we say that somebody who has lived here for a single day is as welcome and as important and as valued as somebody who has lived here their entire lifetime. And I think that part of being a responsible steward of living in this state, which is an area of the country that people love to live in, who want to come here, is to strike that balance appropriately and to make sure that we preserve those things that are good about our community, but also that we're always open to welcoming new jobs and welcoming new people into our community, because that's really what makes Bothell a wonderful place is when people say, I felt welcome here, I felt included here, I felt like the first day that I moved in here, it was a community that I could be a part of. I want us to embrace the best in our community, and I think this plan is not perfect, but I think it does a good job of that. So I'll be supporting it.
Councilmember Evans.
Well, I too want to thank all the work everyone that's worked on this plan. I think there were 43 public hearings that the Planning Commission conducted and the City Council conducted 6 or 7 or 8. And the council had requested when we went into this that we take the time to go through it, we make sure we got plenty of council meetings, that we get the information back. And the staff really accommodated that. They really bent over backwards to go give us a matrix and continually update the matrix of all the issues. This is a huge document. I've only got a portion of what I have obtained through this whole process with me tonight, but it is huge. And I think that the staff has done an excellent job in bringing the issues to us, bringing us recommendations, the Planning Commission, and some things were taken out. Some things were added. I think the plan is, some may look at the plan is maybe not as good as it should be. I think it's a great document in the city. Not a perfect document. I don't think the perfect document's been created yet, nor may ever be created. But this certainly gives direction for the future. This city is going to grow. That's what the Urban Growth Management Act says, that to the density should come within these cities are the best to provide these services and things. So it's going to come into this city, and we have the document here in front of us that will guide that development in a reasonable way and provide for our residents, current residents and future residents of the city. So I think the staff has done everything the council has asked them to do, and I appreciate the work on all of us, and I think we have a document in front of us, again, that is going to provide direction for the city in the future, and will be looked at again in the future and updated. But I think I think we've got a document to move forward here that will be good for the city and the residents as a whole. And I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Councilmember Evans. Do you wish to speak? Yep.
I'll be supporting the motion. I want to also thank staff and the Planning Commission for the diligent work that they've done over the past few months. It's been a long and arduous process. I think we've got most of what we wanted to get accomplished. I, too, would like to see something in for affordable housing in all of Bothell. The reason I was kind of pushing it was to just get it started. But I will be supporting the motion. I want to thank staff very much for all the work that they've done.
Great, thanks. Councilmember Ram.
So yeah, this is a huge endeavor. Thank you, staff and the Planning Commission and the public for providing input to the process. So I wanted to touch on I agree with the affordable housing thing. It's a disappointment it's not in here. But we won't keep going on that. But what I want to express is the situation that we have is that Puget Sound Regional Council allocates to the counties how much growth they need to accommodate. And then they give it to the cities. And our total for the whole city is 13,435 more people, population growth, that much by 2035. So what our plan in total does is it not only meets that 13,435 more people, but it actually overshoots it by 6,285 additional people. And in contrast, Woodinville is actually healing in and saying, you know what, we're not going to take the amount of growth that they're asking us to take. They've refused to approve their comprehensive plan, which I don't recommend us doing. But I just, to point out the contrast, it just seems like, in my perspective, the comprehensive plan is a bit biased towards overdevelopment. We need development. We need to accommodate growth. We need to accommodate transportation. We need to accommodate a lot of stuff. But what we don't need to do is accommodate more than we need to. There's an intentional formula, or not formula, but there's this intentional allocation for each city, because each city should have it's not really a burden, but I mean the infrastructure cost is a burden. And if you overshoot what you're trying to accommodate, you need to have more burden on your public to facilitate that. So financially, as in taxes. So with that said, I'm not going to support the underlying motion. I just think that to me is the biggest issue with our comprehensive plan update. Like everybody else said, I think there's things we could have done better, and I like some of the changes we've made. But the simple fact, I mean, I've been to, I don't know, almost 1,000 doors, and that is the number one concern of the public right now, is the infrastructure and the facilities and the amount of growth that we're seeing. And it's just the beginning with overshooting our targets. So.
Great. So I'll be the last to speak on this. In regards to the population growth that is planned, I remember our former community development director, who had a long-standing, very respected tenure here at the City of Bothell, stated quite clearly the population growth that is in this plan is what you call good city planning. It's planning for future growth that we as a city need to accommodate. So, as is typical, most governing bodies have differing opinions. We've seen, I think, 46 planning commission meetings, 8 council meetings. This comp plan represents many different viewpoints, and I believe adequately and properly addresses many of those viewpoints of the City of Bothell, not just one person's perspective, but that as a reflection of over 50 meetings that has been occurring over the last year and a half. So I will certainly be supporting the comp plan that is before us this evening. Glad to see that the majority of council will as well, and we will move forward as a city, and I do hope that we have some of the items that were brought up during this time of discussion before council brought back so we can individually and properly address each of one of those concerns. So we've all had a chance to speak, and now is the time to vote. So if everybody could place their vote for the underlying motion made by Councilmember Lamb, seconded by Councilmember Agnew, and amended by Councilmember Rayum in the UDP 10 item. And if the clerk can display, passes 4-2. So thank you, Council, for the discussion. Thank you, staff, for your leadership in this regard. We are going to be going into executive session until approximately 8:30 for legal advice, pending litigation, and potential sale of property. We will be back. Bothell City Council is back in session. Next item on the agenda is AB 15093, consider award of a construction contract for Bothell Everett Highway and 228th Street Southeast intersection safety improvements. We have a presentation from staff this evening. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Today's staff is here to make a recommendation to award a construction contract to Three Kings Environmental of Battleground, Washington, for the construction of the Bothell Everett Highway improvements at the intersection of 228th Street. This is a federally funded project, and the goal of the project is to enhance safety at this intersection by adding a second left turn lane on the west leg of 228th, upgrading traffic signal and illumination and ADA ramps, and paving and rechannelizing the roadway. The project was advertised for bids in May, and staff did a bid review and would recommend that we award this contract to Three Kings Environmental. This project, I brought a few pictures just to illustrate what the improvements would look like. So this is a view facing east on 228th. And what you see is we are going to hold the south curb line on the side of the gas station. This is on 228th looking east. We would hold the south curb line and do our improvements, our widening to the north of the street. So the 2 eastbound lanes would remain the same location, and then we would convert one of the westbound lanes into the left turn. And then where we have the landscaping strip on the north side of the street, we would expand that, do some grading, and make that a travel lane that heads west up the hill. This is a view facing west. And again, just to show you the south side of the street is what is going to be expanded, and that's where the additional travel lane will be. This is another view just facing towards the intersection. And in the middle there, that narrow strip over there is where the bike lanes would continue across the way up the hill towards Nike Hill. This is just another view facing west. And this is a view facing south on Bothell Everett Highway. Again, we have a bike lane that we're going to hold there. We are planning to demolish those traffic islands and kind of smoothen the flow through the intersection. So in addition to approving this contract, we are also requesting approval of $130,000 in additional traffic impact fee funds to go towards funding this project because it was slightly over budget. With that, that ends my presentation, and I would welcome any questions from council. Thank you.
Thank you, Luta. Any questions, Councilmember Evans?
Yes, thank you. Is there a reason that our engineering estimate seemed like it missed the mark here? I mean, I can see it being off some, but $300,000 on this project is, and as I look at some of the unit costs, what the engineer's estimate was compared to what the contractors were bidding was twice as much as what the unit price was of the engineer's estimates. I'm just curious why the engineer estimate was so far off of what our bids were.
I believe it's probably a combination of reasons. Most of the times we try to go out with our bids towards the beginning of the year, and we feel like it's a more competitive climate at that time.
Right.
Unfortunately, because we had to go through a few contractual issues with WashDOT, the project got a little bit delayed with getting the approval. So that's why we went out in May, while we would have preferred to go around January. So, and it's across the board, some of these bid items, I agree with you, some of them came in really high. And we use a method, we typically use a unit bid analysis tool that is provided by WashDOT to give us a sense of how much, based on the quantity, what the unit price should be. So I believe the engineers, we did the best we could, but given the bidding climate, it is what it is.
Right, and we were delayed in getting out to bid because of the issues with WashDOT. And do we have an opportunity to go back to the granting agency and get any additional money to cover these increased costs?
No, we didn't. We didn't do that.
Okay, and then just one last question. So the construction administration costs are estimated to be lower than originally estimated. Why is that?
So originally, we thought we'd try and take a best guess of how many staff members we think that we're going to use on the project. So originally, I estimated that we would need at least 3 city staff, just to be on the safe side. So we have a resident engineer, an office engineer, and we thought we needed another person to help with the work. But as time came closer, we kind of fine-tuned the estimate and found that we could do the work more efficiently with fewer people.
And by using $130,000 from our traffic impact fees, does that limit any other projects? Or is this, looks like it's uncommitted?
I believe it is traffic impact fees that were originally designated for Crossroads project, but they haven't used up all their money. Originally, I think they had like 1.4 million allocated, and they've only used a portion of that.
So that'll make up some of the difference here on this project then.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Councilmember Sandberg?
I have a question on the design. So in a couple locations, you're removing the traffic islands, and how is pedestrian crossings at those points going to have the same level or improved safety with the traffic islands gone? Because that's sort of like a little safe stopping point across a pretty long block crossing.
Okay. The concept behind removing the islands is because there's the free flow traffic around those islands are not controlled, and so for the pedestrian crossing distance, if you just tighten up that corner and remove that slip ramp, it narrows the distance that the pedestrian has to walk there by making it safer. And you don't have to cross this, high-speed right turn that people are just flying through and not really paying attention for pedestrians. And there's just no control or warning for them that there's a pedestrian ready to cross, even to just to get to the island. So that makes it safer.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Lamb, will you make a motion to extend?
I'd move to extend to 9:30.
Any discussion? Everybody can place their vote to move the meeting or extend the meeting till 9:30. The clerk can display. Passes unanimously. Anyone else wish to ask questions regarding this item? Is there a motion?
I'd move the recommended action.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lamb and a second by Councilmember Agnew. Any discussion?
I just want to thank staff for this. This is probably the most significant traffic problem in our city that I keep hearing from people about, the intersection of 228th and Bothell River Highway, and I really appreciate the efforts that you're putting into this, and I'm sincerely hoping that this will provide some relief to people. Thanks.
Councilmember Sandberg, then Councilmember Ram.
I'd also like to thank staff on their hard work on this issue. I know this has been a big issue for people in the north end of the city who have to use that intersection. They have been clamoring for 2 left-hand turn lanes for a while, so I'm glad we're finally able to move forward on that. And it looked like from your staff report that construction was going to commence shortly and should complete within 60 days. So that means that people will see this intersection improvement by fall.
Yeah, Councilmember Ram.
Saying thank you, staff. Yeah, this intersection is pretty bad. I've almost been hit by a car multiple times going through that intersection to get to that island, so that's going to be a huge improvement for pedestrian safety. And then the left turn lanes coming eastbound, that's just going to make a huge difference for them, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody could place their vote for the motion made by Councilmember Lamb, seconded by Councilmember Agnew. And the clerk can display. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is AB 15094. Consider approval of a resolution extending the January 1st, 2013 through December 31st, 2014 collective bargaining agreement between the City of Bothell and the International Association of Firefighters Local 2099 and providing a cost of living adjustment for 2015. You do not look like Michelle Davis. Peter Trozen, our Assistant City Manager, has a presentation for us.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, good evening. I'm not Michelle Davis. The City Manager introduced you to Dean Perez at the beginning of the meeting this evening. Shortly before Dean got here, though, on her last day, Jamie Marsden obtained a tentative agreement with the IAFF local to extend their contract that expired on the 31st of December last year. The IAFF acknowledged that they had waited to request this, and it was their delay, or their requested delay, was due to the fact that there was so much doubt around the results of the RFA initiative. So this extension includes, really the only thing to point out to you is includes a 2.2% COLA, and we and the staff recommend your approval. And I stand by for any questions.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Any questions? Councilmember Sandberg?
What is the total biennial budget impact or annual budget impact? How does that 2.2% COLA increase translate into actual dollars?
Yeah, I will have to get back to you on that figure unless Dean happens to know it. But
I don't remember the actual dollar amount, but I will tell you that it was budgeted.
So if you can get back to us with the actual dollar amount at some later date, that would be great.
No further comment. We have a motion by Councilmember Agnew. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Lamb. Any discussion? No, you wish to speak on 15094, consider approval of comment letters, Sound Transit long-range plans. 095 is what she asked at. My understanding is you wanted Sound Transit long-range plans. Okay. Ms. Gwynn, do you wish to speak on this item? I'm going to cross that out on the 095.
Thank you, Mayor Freed, for allowing me to speak tonight, and apologize for the confusion on the agenda bill numbers. That was my fault.
I'll change it.
As you know, most of the discussion for agreements for the public for their salaries are done during executive session. So what the public receives is just what's the agenda bill. And it didn't really provide much more than what the COLA was. So I have mainly questions instead of comments. I'd like to know what kind of documents were provided to you in connection with the increase in the COLA increase. And once the vote is taken by City Council, are these documents that were provided to you in executive session now available for the public? It's my understanding they are, but I just want to make sure. And kind of in line with Councilmember Sandberg's question, when the initial contract was done, because this is an third-year extension of the first 2 years of the contract, was there a total salary comparison performed with the original contract? And if yes, what cities were involved in that comparison? And did you receive in the review of this third extension what the total salary comparison is with other cities? Because my memory when I was on council was we would get portions, but never the total package. We would be told what additional monies would be required in the budget, but not until I started doing the top 25 salaries and looking at other jurisdictions and doing a total compensation study did I really get the full picture. And if you can answer that, that would be great. Any of those questions?
Okay, thank you so much. We do have a motion on the floor that we are going to be discussing. So thank you, Ms. Gwynn. Anybody wish to speak to the motion that's on the floor made by Councilmember Agnew and seconded by Councilmember Lamb? Yes.
Does staff have answers to
It
any of
has
the
to be
questions?
to the motion, please. There's a motion on the floor.
Well, I would have asked if it's necessary to approve tonight, or if we can do it at the next public hearing to get the answers to the questions. Is there a time sensitivity?
Well, there is a motion on the floor, so if you wish to speak to the motion, you are more than willing to do so. Otherwise, we will take a vote. Seeing no further comments?
I would like to move to table to July 21st.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Is that a debatable?
It's not debatable.
Not debatable? All right, then go for it.
Table.
Clerk and display.
What do we?
Is it working? That's a no to the table. Anyone else wish to speak to the underlying motion made by Councilmember Agnew, second by Councilmember Lamb.
Yeah,
Member Lamb.
I'll speak in
Thank
support of
Councilmember
this.
Agnew.
And I'm sorry, did you want to speak?
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, so I'll speak in favor of this. So essentially what's happening for the listening public is that we, in the last contract negotiation we had with our firefighters collective bargaining group, there was included a provision that they could extend the contract rather than renegotiate it, which has costs to both the city and the collective bargaining unit for the firefighters to simply extend it and to apply cost of living. And in this case, the cost of living, I think, is 2.2%, which will be retroactive to January 1st of 2015. So the net effect of this is that we keep the existing contract that we had negotiated and apply the agreed-upon COLA, which is 2.2% for that, rather than going out and renegotiating the entire contract, looking out forward for a period of 3 years. I think this is a fiscally responsible thing to do. There is no guarantee, and I would actually say with the economy, it's probably a more efficient and less expensive option for both parties to effectuate this. So I support this. As a practical matter, this is going to, we still have a contract that's coming up in 6 months. This is something that we're going to be negotiating anyways. This gets us current on the year that we're in right now. We're now in July. Our contract had not been negotiated, had been kind of going along since January without a contract. This remedies that, gets us back into a situation where we're in contract with our firefighters, and then we'll have an opportunity to negotiate a longer-term agreement towards the end of this year. So I'll be supporting the motion.
Councilmember Agnew.
I'll be supporting the motion, basically for the same reasons that Councilmember Lamb just brought up. It's an extension of the contract. The gentlemen and the ladies that work at the Bothell Fire Department have been doing an excellent job. They've been without a contract since January. They haven't said a word. They just want to do their job for this city. I think it's fair to the citizens and it's fair to the firefighters.
Thank you. Councilmember Ram, any comment?
I support the underlying motion. The fire department's great. Appreciate their hard work.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Evans, any comments?
I believe this cost of living is comparable or the same as what the other city employees in the city received. And I understand that these funds were allocated in the budget, set aside, they're there. I will be voting in favor of passing this amendment or this contract on the basis that it is COLA only, which it was stated to us, that's the only amendment to the contract. Otherwise, the contract remains the same. So based on just COLA approval, I will support it.
Great. Thank you. Everybody's had a chance to speak. The motion was made by Councilmember Agnew, seconded by Councilmember Lamb. If everybody could place their vote. And the clerk can display. Passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for the conversation. Next on the agenda is AB 15095 to consider approval of a comment letter for South Transit long-range plans. Do you wish to speak both, Sherman, to both of these items?
Is there?
Oh, just
no,
1509. No, Peter would do the other one. Never mind.
Yeah. Yeah, Peter's going to do that one. Okay, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you guys about this. We had a good presentation from Sound Transit and King County Metro regarding their plans on what they're doing. Just want to start off giving you a little quick background about the Sound Transit process and what's already happened. 2004, Sound Transit was approved by voters and started the Link light rail system. 2008, Sound Transit 2 was approved, and at that point, we had requested a new park and ride and transit center at an estimated cost of $45 million. The only part that was approved for us, however, at that time was a $5 million seed money to help site the park and ride location and get moving on that. And at this point, we are going to be looking to fund the rest of that construction and the design and right-of-way for that park and ride center, and get our comments in line with their schedule. And as they mentioned earlier, those comments are going to be due on July 15th. So, City of Bothel's already invested heavily in the transit improvements. This is a real important funding opportunity for us. The downtown sub-area plan adopted in 2009 is a transit-friendly program and is something that we are just trying to implement right now with our comments and this list of projects that we're looking at. The development of the 98th and 185th Street transit-oriented street corridor is a part of that sub-area plan, and it was in collaboration with other agencies, city staff, and public feedback. So, and then the final piece of our investment right now is the BAT lanes on 522 that have come with the Crossroads project and other sections of that road. So, to meet the goals of the Sound Transit 3 that they had mentioned earlier, regional connectivity considerations that I think are important for us is, we have Canyon Park Regional Growth Center, which is it's in the middle of the I-5 spine, which is already planned with the ST3 current priority project list. It's also it's going to be a significant hub between that, the east side, and Snohomish County, based on its location and the anticipated growth which we expect in that area. On the other end, downtown area, the SR 522 corridor is a regional corridor and also is a very important link for us to connect to the communities to the south, Lake Forest Park, Kenmore, and the support of improved transit capabilities through that corridor. And then the UW Bothell and Cascadia campus is the fastest growing campus in the state right now, and to accommodate that growth, which being a commuter generated school more or less, it's not, we're not talking about a local small city that's based on colleges. This is for most of the students are going to be a commute as they grow. We need to emphasize those the ability to have reliable service for that community just as well, and we need to encourage that connection. And as we heard a couple months ago from Community Transit, the SWIFT 2 bus rapid transit system is underway, and they're citing stops along that corridor from along SR 527 down to the Canyon Park Growth Center, basically. So with those regional connections, the three projects that we're emphasizing in the comment letter includes the Park and Ride and Transit Center. It is the purpose for that project is to relieve some of the park and ride situation that we have right now on SR 522 at the existing park and ride. It's more centrally located, and we may free up spaces at the existing park and ride for additional 405 routes to and from the east to go to there, where the east-west or to the SR 522 routes can relocate through our new corridor, transit corridor, and progress through there. We want to look for the construction funds to complete the BAT lanes on 522, and we want to emphasize the high-capacity transit service expansion as a first step to ultimately link light rail along the east side via the I-405 corridor through Seattle on SR 522 and to Seattle through the future I-5 link light rail station that's planned for the Northeast 145th Street corridor and I-5. The The other considerations that we want to emphasize is the link light rail considerations, which we feel with the development of the I-5 spine, it makes sense for us to emphasize a connection from Linwood to the Canyon Park Regional Center with the link system, as well as the Bothell campus. And then also continuing there down 405 to Bellevue and potentially the East Link spur to Redmond. It would also connect to the Totem Lake Regional Center, which is emphasized right now, and what the City of Kirkland, for example, is pushing heavily to get connections to that. And then finally, to have a study for potential future link light rail system connections to I-5 and to I-405 via the SR 522 corridor through downtown Bothell. So that's pretty much the summary of the what the comment letter is and where we are emphasizing recommendations for you to approve.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Any questions? No? Is everybody in support of me signing and sending this letter? Yes, Councilmember Sandberg.
So I would like to make some suggested language changes to this letter. So can we just talk about it first, or do I have to make it in the form of a motion?
Yeah, why don't you, I've got my pen out and the note or the letter.
Okay, so, and thank you, staff, for drafting this letter for us to discuss. So the letter starts off with how Bothell has heavily invested in transit improvements itself. And then our speaker, Dick Paler, and also Councilmember Lamb had talked about this historical inequity. So I think we could lead in with, after we've completed $100 million in public infrastructure investments, which may result in an additional $400 million of private development. And I think from there we should say something like, historically, Bothell has been underserved by transit. And however you want to make that, I think Mr. Paler would be happy to help us with language. And then we go on to say, it is vital that future Sound Transit 3 programs, and instead of having a specific list that says, you know, we want these 3 things, I think we should say it is vital that future Sound Transit programs should address this inequity. And again, whatever appropriate language. And so we can, I kind of like the approach of include but not limited to, because if you ask for 3 things, then those might be just the 3 things you get, or they'll pick from those 3 things and only give you 1 thing. So, so I'm fine with the BAT lanes and high capacity transit service along 522. I think high capacity transit, at least in my mind, leaves the options open to explore lots of different modes, not just light rail. It could be bus rapid transit and other things. I think a lot of people think immediately going to light rail. But the one item, our one laundry list item that I have a concern about is the park and ride and transit center along the 98th and 185th Street corridor. And what I would prefer that we do is make that language a little more general. And instead of saying a 270 space park and ride lot, I would say an expanded park and ride lot. We want an expanded facility. We don't want to tell them how many spaces. And to serve the east-west transit route through Bothell, and not be specific about confining it just to the 98th, 185th corridor, because we've spent $60 million on realigning 522, and that is a great corridor for our bus service to travel on. And I think we need to have more of a community conversation about where the community would like transit to be, and by keeping it open, we can have that conversation and not constrain ourselves to a particular corridor. When we talked about the downtown master plan, I then was not a fan of moving transit onto 185th. The residents on 185th, some of them contacted us and said, we don't want the buses rumbling right by our front doors. It's not so far that for us to walk to the Bothell Park and Ride. So, and if you think about all of our new residents that will be on the west side of the Multi-Way Boulevard on 98th, where all that hopefully planned residential development is going in, if I'm a resident living there, if I'm going to have to choose between having a noisy bus go immediately by me, by where I live, or walking 5 minutes to a transit stop on 522 to get where I'm going, I'm going to prefer that option because it is a flat, easy 10-minute walk from QFC to 522. That's a pretty convenient, easy, it's going to be a great scenic walk when we have the Horse Creek improvements in there. So again, I question the vision of trying to put the transit onto that corridor. We have a great, terrifically located park and ride already. The existing Bothell Park and Ride, it is at 100% capacity. It is a topographically advantageous site to put a parking structure there. People have talked about in the past using that as a transit-oriented development site, which the speaker from Sound Transit today said that was a priority, one of their 4 core priorities. I think that.
Do you have any other changes to the letter?
No, I want to also point out that we don't have any money to upgrade the 185th Street corridor. So we haven't finished the Multi-Way Boulevard, and we haven't finished Main Street Extension. So it's also an expensive proposal to put buses up on 185th. And so 2 park and rides are confusing, and that's sort of what we're proposing here. Kenmore used to have 2 park and rides, which was pretty confusing to commuters. And so for all of those reasons, I would like that first bullet to be more general, and I would like us to have a conversation with the public about their views and vision on future transit.
Okay, thank you. Other people have comments on the letter? Councilmember Lyon.
I agree with the part about asking or including that we've been traditionally underserved. I think that was a good comment. I think the 185th is a conversation that ship has kind of sailed. I mean, that we are realigning. 185th is now going to be realigned. I used to take transit every single day to downtown Seattle, and there's a huge hill that goes down to the 522 lot. It also, while it may be a flat 5-minute walk, and it's kind of hard to think about in the month that we've been having and the weather that we've been having, when it rains, as it often does here, it's miserable. It's miserable to take any extensive walk to use public transit. And I think that it's good to have we're seeing density being added along that corridor, and I think it's appropriate to have that phrased as it is in the letter. So I support it as currently drafted. But I do appreciate and agree with the first comment that Councilmember Sandberg made about referencing our historical lack of funding from Sound Transit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else? No. So I'd support that change as well. Historically, Bothell has been underserved by transit as in comparison to surrounding communities. But no other changes. Councilmember Evans?
I agree with that. And I think Mr. Taylor asked if there was any way to show the actual financial numbers of what we've contributed and what we've got back. I mean, that's pretty significant information if that's available, could be compiled.
Is that something that could be done maybe in a one-word or one-sentence rather summary?
A lot and not much.
My issue is adding too much detail and getting to the point in a letter. But Sherman, what's your thoughts?
With that, Depending on where that data is available, I think you could,
City manager?
Nothing on that, but I didn't realize you were going to call me so quickly. I'm sorry.
Oh, you leaned forward.
I did, yeah, but for another comment after you're done with this.
I guess historically, Bothell has been underserved by transit. Is a accurate and straight enough, direct enough statement. City manager.
So on another issue, I would take out the 270 spaces and just call it a park and ride transit facility. My concern would be they've already awarded $5 million to us, and certainly $5 million can go a long way in a partnership in building a parking structure. I wouldn't simply want them to indicate you can build a parking structure for $25,000 a space, and now you only need $7 million to build 270 spaces.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So. Great. Do we need a motion for this, or do I just get to take consensus of council?
I think whatever's desirous of council, you can certainly do it in a formal or informal manner.
Council is asked to approve the Sound Transit comment letter. I guess I'm just willing to sign it with the historically Bothell has been underserved by transit, as well as remove the 270 spaces. Seems like a majority of council would be in support of that. Sherman?
Did you want to include that should address the inequity comment at the
I think
following the second?
Certainly implied and well stated with historically Bothell has been underserved by transit.
Okay, so just leave that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So next item on the agenda is consider approval of joint letter and Sound Transit AB 15096. Mr. Peter Trozen, our Assistant City Manager.
Before you put your signing pen away, and you might ask why another letter, Kenmore has approached us and announced or told us that they're trying to facilitate a North Shore coalition of cities. The city manager of Shoreline has specifically asked that we sign this letter in connection with Lake Forest Park, Kenmore, and themselves, just to show a regional approach to the problem. The Chamber of Commerce has also been asked, as has UW Bothell. They have signed similar letters. In fact, in your folders, you see another letter from 3 legislators, state legislators, and then you see the Bothell Chamber's letter of support as well. And you heard Ms. Schaefer this evening say in her presentation, how will transit serve Bothell? And then Chris mentioned that the 522 high-capacity transit is on the long-range plan. So this is an effort to try to get to answer that first question and to move up the high-capacity transit issue in their priority list. So unfortunately, we don't have a chance to make additions or edits to this one. This is a sign or don't sign. The desired outcome is that you would sign, we would put the city logo along with the logos of the other 3 cities and their mayor's signatures.
Great. Anybody have any questions? Councilmember Ram?
So how come Woodinville's not on here? Do we know why they weren't engaged?
No, but, we also mentioned to them that one of our priorities was 405 high-capacity transit. The thing was that they had Lake Forest Parks Council had already looked at it and approved it. So the edits are that train has left the station. So I think Woodinville's probably just a little bit behind us.
Okay, so it's the cities of Shoreline, Lake Forest Park, Kenmore, and Bothell.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
I support you signing this.
You want to make a motion?
I would move that we authorize the mayor to sign the letter as presented.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. No city manager reports? Anything else for the good of the cause? Nope. We are adjourned.